I could see the sunlight again. It was beautiful. I stood by the window, feeling the warmth spread across my face, and I couldn't help but whisper to myself in disbelief. I never thought I'd feel this kind of warmth ever again. Just moments ago, I was on a hospital rooftop in a wheelchair. My parents were by my side as I watched the sun slowly dip below the horizon. My eyelids had grown heavy, so heavy I couldn't keep them open. As the world went dark, the last thing I heard were the panicked, desperate cries of my mother and father. Then, I opened my eyes here. I stood at the window, my head throbbing as a flood of foreign information surged into my brain. Terms like basic sword mastery and 18 styles of basic gymnastics swirled in my mind. Despite the pain, I refused to sit down. I didn't want to lie on the bed or rest in a chair. In my previous life, I had been diagnosed with a terminal illness. Even after surviving chemotherapy, I lost the ability to move. I had spent so long trapped in a bed that I couldn't remember what it felt like to just stand. Now, feeling the solid floor beneath my feet, I cherished every second of it. "Mom, Dad, I'm sorry," I whispered. "I can't be with you anymore. Take care of them for me, brothers, sisters." As the view outside the window grew brighter, the pain in my head finally began to fade. I had fully integrated the memories of the original owner of this body. The year was 500 of the Martial Era. 5 centuries ago, a massive asteroid, 100 kilometers wide, struck Earth without warning. Humanity had no time to react. People expected the world to end in fire and floods, but the opposite happened. The air became purer, the world expanded, and strange spatial rifts tore open across the sky and land. Terrifying monsters poured out of those rifts. The course of human history changed forever. At first, modern weapons held the line. But as time passed, guns and missiles lost their effectiveness against the evolving beasts. Out of 600 major cities, fewer than 100 remained. The population plummeted until the world's spiritual energy fully awakened. That was when martial arts took center stage. Legends like Master Li, who created Jeet Kune Do, guarded the imperial capital alone, keeping every beast at bay for 100 miles. There was Grandmaster Ma, the Sword Saint, who took the head of a beast lord from 1,000 miles away. Because of these masters, humanity survived. We were still at a disadvantage, and news of towns being wiped out by beast tides was common, but we were fighting back. I realized the original owner of this body was also named Guoxiao. It felt like fate. His parents had died 10 years ago during a beast riot while on a mission. He had been an orphan since he was 8. He was lucky in one sense. His parents died as heroes, so the government protected his home and provided a monthly stipend. But that helped stop the moment he turned 18 a few months ago. Yesterday, he had pushed himself too hard. Between overtraining and severe malnutrition, his body simply gave out. He collapsed, and that's when I took over. It was a tragic, powerless way to go. "Next month is the martial exam," I muttered, exhaling slowly. "With my current strength, I won't even make the cut for the lowest-ranked universities. But as long as I'm alive, there's hope." I forced a smile. Being alive was enough for me. Suddenly, a cold, mechanical voice rang out in my head. Ding. Host meets the binding conditions. System binding initiated. 10%. 90%. System binding successful. A transparent attribute panel floated in front of my eyes. Name, Guoxiao. Realm, Martial Apprentice, Stage 3, 110/2000. Cultivation Method, System Method, Max Level. Basic Gymnastics, Beginner, 663/1000. Martial Arts, Basic Combat, 15 1000ths. Basic Sword Mastery, 15 1000ths. Basic Movement, 8 1000ths. Experience Points, 0. Current Passive, Stage 3 Apprentice grants 3 experience points per minute automatically. I stared at the screen, stunned. So the novels were right. A system really was the standard kit for a transmigrator. I felt for the original Guoxiao. He had reached Stage 3 under such miserable conditions through pure grit. A method that absorbs and generates experience automatically? I looked at the name System Method and frowned. That sounds a bit generic. Might as well call it the Northern Dark Technique. To my surprise, the text on the panel flickered and changed instantly to Northern Dark Technique. I stood there, speechless. My old, battered phone on the desk started ringing. I picked it up. It was my class teacher, Su Qing. Guo, is everything okay? You didn't call in yesterday, she said, her voice laced with worry. Sorry, Teacher Su. I wasn't feeling well and fell asleep early. I must have slept through the ringer, I lied smoothly. As long as you're okay, she sighed in relief. Listen, the school is giving the seniors a break until the exam starts. You can still come in to use the training equipment whenever you want. She knew my situation. She knew I didn't have a place to train at home. Thanks, Teacher Su. I understand. Guo, I know things are tough. If you need help, tell me. I don't have much money, but I can get you a few packs of body tempering powder. I appreciate it, teacher. If I run into trouble, I'll let you know. After hanging up, I leaned back. A school break, huh? From my memories, Manhwa Academy was like a private school for the elite. Except for me. Everyone there was rich or influential. I still didn't quite understand how a penniless orphan like me had been admitted in the first place, but that didn't matter now. I had a new life, a system, and a month to change my fate. I figured my admission to Manhwa Academy must have been a government clerical error. A penniless orphan like me had no business in a school for the elite. As for this month-long break, it wasn't hard to guess the reason. The wealthy kids were heading home to gorge themselves on body tempering powder or even high-grade body tempering ointment. They were all making a final sprint for the college entrance exams. No other school in Honghai City would dare to give students a month off right before the biggest test of their lives. Most schools kept their students locked in classrooms 24 hours a day. But Manhwa Academy was different. They were rich. Even though I felt out of place there, I was grateful. Since my junior year, the school provided 1 pack of body tempering powder every month. Each pack was worth 30,000 yuan. Only a powerhouse like Honghai could afford that. In other schools, only the top 100 students got that kind of treatment. Speaking of the powder, I had just collected my monthly ration yesterday. I hadn't used it yet. It was the perfect chance to test my Northern Dark technique. I looked at the palm-sized packet in my hand. 30,000 yuan. I wondered how much experience it was worth. I activated the skill, and a surge of suction erupted from my palm. The packet began to shrink, dissolving into nothingness. Within seconds, it was gone. Not even a speck of dust remained. Experience plus 500. I blinked. If I had 4 of these, I could jump straight to the 4th stage of body tempering. But then I paused. If I had used the powder normally, I might not have gained that much. The Northern Dark technique was efficient. It didn't waste a single drop of energy. It was incredible, but I was broke. If I had enough money, I could reach the martial artist realm in minutes. I shook the greedy thoughts away. My new body was severely malnourished. If I broke through too quickly, I'd probably collapse. There was a reason the previous owner hadn't used the powder yet. He was waiting for his body to be ready. I tied my hair back and got ready to leave. I needed to head to the nearby slaughterhouse. My relief funds had been cut off, so everything depended on me now. The slaughterhouse was the only place that would hire someone with my thin build, mostly because the work was too filthy and foul-smelling for anyone else. Walking down the street was a trip. I saw martial artists in high-tech protective suits and armor, but then I'd pass someone dressed like an ancient scholar in traditional Hanfu. My memories told me the world was like this, but seeing it in person was a total visual shock. After 10 minutes, I reached the sign, Yongxing Slaughterhouse. It was a massive place, specializing in chickens and ducks. The owner, Wang Yong, was just arriving at the gate. He looked at me with a confused expression. Xiao? No school today. Uncle Yong, the school announced a break. I thought I'd come in early, I replied. Right? Manhwa Academy always does that. He started to ask why I wasn't at home training, but then he remembered my situation and stopped himself. He looked at me with pity. Uncle Yong, I can train here too, I said with a smile. I'll get to work. He sighed as I walked past. I really appreciated him. I never managed to hit my daily quotas, but he never scolded me or docked my pay. I went to the locker room, changed into my work clothes, and grabbed a dagger. Usually, I used a cleaver, but I wanted to see if I could use the dagger to practice my basic sword technique. If I could gain proficiency while killing chickens, I'd be killing 2 birds with 1 stone. I aimed the blade at a hen in a cage. I tried to recall the instructor's movements, arm extending from the shoulder, forming a straight line with the blade. I lunged. The blade scraped the side of the cage. I missed. The hen clucked loudly, almost like it was mocking me. I took a deep breath. I cleared my mind and focused on the tip of the dagger. I lunged again, and this time, the blade pierced straight through the hen's body. It fluttered for a second before going still. I checked my status panel. Basic sword technique. Entry 9/1000. It worked. If I kept this up, I could reach the small success or even great success stage before the exams without spending a single point of experience. I pulled the dead hen out and tossed it into the basket. My job was simple: kill them, basket them, and move on. I wanted to use my Northern Dark technique to absorb the energy, but Uncle Yone walked over. I didn't want to show off my secrets. "Shao, was that the basic sword technique just now?" he asked. "Yes, Uncle Yone. I wanted to practice." I felt a bit embarrassed, knowing he'd probably seen my first clumsy miss. "Not bad," he nodded. "When you finish your shift this evening, come to my office. I have something for you." "Sure thing, Uncle Yone." As he walked away, I didn't overthink it. I had work to do. I spent the rest of the morning alternating between practicing my stabs and secretly absorbing the energy from the carcasses whenever no one was looking. I discovered that a normal chicken or duck gave about 10 experience points. It wasn't much, but it added up. By lunch, my basic sword technique had jumped to 111 1/1000ths, and my total experience points sat at 1801. If I dumped all of that into my sword skills, I'd hit small success instantly. I sat down to eat the slaughterhouse lunch, feeling more optimistic than I had since I arrived in this world. I finished my shift and decided to head home for a quick rest. Every time I swung that sword, my body took a hit. The basic sword technique was draining, and the more I practiced, the more exhausted I became. If I didn't lie down and let my muscles recover, I didn't think I'd survive long enough to see a second chance at life. Outside the slaughterhouse, I spotted a familiar face. It was Kai-gu. "Kai-gu, I thought you were grounded," one of the guys nearby asked. Kai-gu rolled his eyes. "Don't remind me. I'm only out for today. Starting tomorrow, I'm locked in for a month. My old man is getting body forging ointment ready for me. He said I'm not stepping foot outside until the day before the college entrance exams." Body forging ointment. The group gasped. I understood why. Body forging powder was common. It cost 30,000 a bag, and for kids like them, it was like drinking water. But the ointment was different. One box was worth at least 300,000. Their families could afford it, but the problem was supply. You couldn't just buy it unless you had serious connections. On the black market, the price doubled. Hearing that Kai-gu was going to use it daily for a month meant his family was dropping a fortune. "It's not even that great," Kai-gu complained, though he looked smug. "You develop a resistance if you use too much." "Still, it's better than nothing," a student chimed in. "I'm barely getting any results from the powder anymore, but it's still better than just training normally." "Tell me about it," another added. "At least we have something. Think about that guy in our class." Kai-gu sighed, looking around at his friends. Then his eyes locked onto something in the distance. "Speak of the devil. Isn't that our classmate right there?" He pointed toward me. I was just walking out of the slaughterhouse gates. "Wait, it really is him," one of them said, squinting. "What is he doing coming out of a slaughterhouse? Is he working there?" "Looks like it. Look at his boots and his pants. Those are bloodstains." "A butcher? How pathetic. He's completely disgraced Honghai 7th High. How unlucky to even see him. Let's get out of here before he recognizes us. It's embarrassing." They hurried away, but the damage was done. By the time I got home, the school forums were already buzzing with the news that I was a butcher. My reputation at school, which was already bottom tier, hit a new low. I didn't care. I was fast asleep, blissfully unaware of the online drama. Even if I had known, I wouldn't have bothered to reply. I was earning my own way, and more importantly, I was farming experience points and proficiency. It was a win-win. When I finally made it to the top, this butcher stint would just be a cool part of my backstory. After my nap, I felt recharged. I headed back and worked until 6 in the evening. By the time I clocked out, I had slaughtered 200 birds, double my morning count. I checked my stats. Basic sword technique. Entry 311/1000. Experience points 3207. I was a third of the way to the next level of swordsmanship, and I could feel my movements becoming fluid and precise. My experience points were ticking up by 3 every minute. I had enough to break through to the 4th level of the martial apprentice realm right now. But I hesitated. I needed energy first. I remembered my breakthrough from the 2nd to the 3rd level. I nearly died. The moment I leveled up, every cell in my body screamed with hunger, like I hadn't eaten in years. I had shoveled every scrap of food in the house into my mouth just to survive. My body was too malnourished, too empty. If I broke through now without a massive source of energy, the physical toll would kill me. I headed to Uncle Yong's office and knocked. "Come in," he called out. He pointed to a chair by the tea table. "Sit down, Xiao." "Uncle Yong, you wanted to see me?" I'm not the type to beat around the bush. I've always been direct, even if it rubs people the wrong way. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a small bottle. He slid it across the table toward me. "What's this?" I asked. "Blood Chi replenishing pill," he said calmly. My heart skipped a beat. This was exactly what I needed. It was a grade 1 pill designed specifically to fix physical depletion and malnutrition. One pill would fix my hollowed-out constitution. But it was expensive, 2 million credits. I could sell my house and still not afford one. I looked at the bottle, then back at him. "Uncle Yong, this is too much. I can't take this." I wanted it. I craved it. But I couldn't just take a handout of that magnitude. Uncle Yong smiled at my hesitation. "Take it. Consider it a loan." "You trust me that much?" I asked, surprised. "What if I just take it and run?" "I don't think you're that kind of person," he said softly. "After all, you're their son. You knew my parents?" I was shocked. I had all the memories of my previous life in this body, but there was nothing about Uncle Yong. 19 years ago, he began, his eyes drifting toward the past. "I was in the same warrior squad as your parents. I was an 8th level martial apprentice back then. Your father was an 8th level warrior, and your mother was 4th level. We encountered a wounded tier 3 armored rhino in the wild." He explained how they fought the beast, a monster worth millions, and barely survived. They only won because the rhino bled out. But as they sat there, exhausted and celebrating their victory, they were ambushed by another squad. "Only your parents and I made it out," Uncle Yong said with a bitter laugh. "But the price was high. My meridians were damaged, and I was never able to break through to the warrior stage. Your parents, they suffered the same fate. Their strength dropped instantly. They fell from the warrior stage back down to martial apprentices. I, Xiao, listened in silence as Uncle Yong spoke. It made sense now. I finally understood why my parents had stayed in such a low state for so long. After we got back, Uncle Yong continued. We spent a long time recovering. Once we could move again, we headed straight for the warrior guild to report the squad that ambushed us. But when we walked in, we found out we were the ones being hunted. They put out a warrant for our arrest, claiming we were the ones who betrayed them. He let out a dry, hollow laugh. From that day on, we stopped going to the guild. We couldn't handle the mockery. Eventually, your parents and I stopped seeing each other as much. Do you know why? He looked at me with eyes full of scorn. Do you know who the captain of that squad was? The man who ambushed us? It was Lin Feiguang. He's the mayor of Honghai City now. I froze. How is that possible? That's just the reality. We had no background, no power. How could we fight him? We underestimated how petty he was. He used his influence to search for us everywhere. Luckily, it was dark during the ambush and he hadn't seen our faces clearly. The sketches they put out didn't look like us, and our power levels had dropped so much that we didn't fit the description. That's how we survived. Uncle Yong leaned in, his gaze piercing. Do you know how your parents really died? The Beast Riot, I said, repeating the story I'd been told. They died in action during a mission. The last time we met was right before that mission, Uncle Yong whispered. They told me they were going to investigate the cause of the riot. 2 people stuck at the martial apprentice stage. That was a suicide mission. The guild would never have assigned that to them. I investigated for a year. It was a conspiracy. Lin Feiguang arranged it. My heart hammered against my ribs. He thought he was being clever, hiding his tracks. But later, during a business deal, he got drunk and let it slip. I wanted to adopt you after they died, but your name wasn't on the official list. I pulled some strings and found out the government had already arranged things for you. That's when I knew Lin Feiguang was watching you. There are people monitoring you even now. He grabbed my shoulder. The martial exam is next month. If I don't help you now, it'll be too late. This is your only chance to change your fate. This blood-chi pill will fix your body. It might even help you break through to the 5th level of the martial apprentice stage within a month. If you do that, you have a shot at the big 5 universities. Now hide it. Before I could respond, he shoved the bottle into my pocket. He picked up his desk phone and dialed a number. Xiaoli, come in here. A moment later, a man entered. Go to finance and get 3,000 credits, Uncle Yong ordered. As Xiaoli left, Uncle Yong leaned toward me and whispered, in this world, you can only trust yourself. I've done all I can. Remember, this money is just a loan from the slaughterhouse. Xiaoli returned and handed over the cash. Here's the 3,000, boss. Take it, Washao, Uncle Yong said loudly. It'll be deducted from your wages. I can't help you more than this. Thank you, boss, I said, playing along. Go on, get home. Xiaoli, get the car ready. As I walked away, I didn't see Xiaoli pull out a phone. Target just had contact with the owner for 30 minutes. Xiaoli whispered into the receiver. He borrowed 1,000 credits for living expenses. Understood. I'll keep watching. He's just a poor kid. Is this really necessary? I made it back to my small apartment. I stood in my parents' room, staring at their memorial photos. The silence felt heavy. I don't know why Lin Feiguang wanted you dead, I whispered to the photos. But I promise you this. When I'm strong enough, I'll find the truth. I'll make him pay. I swear it. I went to my room and pulled out the pill. Every cell in my body seemed to scream with hunger just looking at it. I didn't hesitate. I popped it into my mouth and swallowed. At first, there was nothing. Is this thing a dud? I muttered. Then it hit me. Ah! A sound of pure, overwhelming ecstasy escaped my lips. I slammed my hands over my mouth, terrified the neighbors would hear. It felt too good. My body was melting. Pure energy flooded my veins, and I could feel my cells feasting on the power. An hour later, I pulled up my status. Name, Washao. Level, 4th level martial apprentice. Experience, 3,927. I had enough. I dumped the experience into my cultivation. A surge of heat exploded in my chest, and I felt my bones pop and settle. 5th level. I felt like I could punch a hole through a brick wall. I probably had 500 pounds of force in my fist now. It was enough to pass the basic requirements for the Big 5, but to actually get in, I needed to reach the 7th level. I decided to try my basic gymnastics routine to see if it helped. 1, 2, 3, 4. By the time I finished the 18 moves, I was collapsed on the floor, gasping for air. Why is this so exhausting? I wheezed. I checked my status again. My proficiency had gone up by exactly 1 point. It was a start. I had a month to become a monster, and I wasn't going to waste a single second. I spent 30 minutes struggling through those 18 moves of basic gymnastics. And for what? My proficiency and cultivation each went up by exactly 1 point. I was panting on the floor, sweat stinging my eyes, feeling like I'd just run a marathon for a handful of pocket change. It wasn't worth it. I looked at the status of my Northern Brightness Divine Art. It had gained 150 experience points in the same half hour without me lifting a finger. The math was simple. I didn't need to waste my energy on basic gymnastics anymore. I rested for a bit until my breath came easy, then I reached for a book. 500 questions on martial theory. I wasn't sleepy at all. The physical exams were vital, sure, but the written portion of the martial arts exam mattered too. Every question and answer for the test was inside this book. If I memorized it, I could bag a perfect score. I wasn't about to let easy points slip through my fingers. The next morning, I stretched my stiff neck after a long night of reading. I pulled up my panel out of habit. Experience, 4,042. Not bad. Even if I did absolutely nothing today, I had enough to break through to the 6th level of the martial apprentice realm. Life was starting to feel good. I headed to the Yongxing slaughterhouse and swapped into my work clothes. The weak, hollow feeling that used to haunt this body was gone. I felt solid. Ah Shao, a voice called out. It was Wang Yong, the owner. The exams are coming up. You should focus on your cultivation. We can get by without you for a few days. I blinked, touched by the gesture. I'm okay, Uncle Yong. I can handle it. He looked at my face, likely seeing the healthy color in my cheeks and the clarity in my eyes. He knew I'd taken the blood and chi pill. He nodded, looking relieved, and went back to his office. Being the boss of a slaughterhouse meant he had plenty of his own problems to deal with. I got to work. My basic sword technique was getting better, and my efficiency with the chickens was terrifying. I could strike exactly where I wanted with zero wasted movement. I tossed the birds into the baskets, quietly absorbing experience points with every kill. It wasn't boring. In fact, I was loving it. I lost track of time. As I finished off the last hen in the crate, a sudden flood of information slammed into my brain. I froze. My vision blurred, and it felt like my consciousness was being yanked into a different dimension. I stood in a void. All around me, shadowy figures were moving, practicing the basic sword technique. I stared, trying to see who they were. The figures shifted and blurred, slowly becoming clearer, as if a thick fog was lifting. Just as I was about to see a face, the world snapped back. Xiao? Works over Xiao. An older woman, one of the cleaners, was shaking my shoulder. I blinked, my mind racing to catch up. Auntie Wong, what happened? I called your name 3 times, and you didn't move, she said, looking worried. Are you okay? You look like you were in a trance. I'm fine, I lied, rubbing my face. I just didn't sleep well last night. I must have spaced out. Well, don't push yourself too hard. My old man is waiting for dinner, so I'm heading out. Good night, Auntie Wong. I'll leave in a minute. Once she was gone, I looked at my hands. Time had moved so fast. It felt like seconds in that space, but outside, the sun had set. Was that my internal consciousness? And who was that figure? Me? I shook my head. I'd figure it out later. I picked up my knife and gave it a casual flick. The movement was fluid, sharp, and effortless. Small success, rank in swordplay was worlds apart from just being a beginner. I wondered what great success, or perfection, would feel like. I checked my stats one last time before leaving. Name, Xiao. Level, 5th level martial apprentice. Experience, 9,712. Techniques, basic sword, small success, basic movement, beginner, basic combat, beginner. It only took 10,000 points to push my sword skills to great success. I was almost there. I cleaned up my station and practically sprinted home, eager to break through to the 6th level in private. As I approached my door, I saw a figure standing in the shadows. It was a woman. I slowed down, but I wasn't scared. Nobody caused trouble inside the city limits. Teacher Sue, I asked as I got closer. It was Su Qing, my homeroom teacher. She let out a long sigh of relief. I thought I'd found the wrong place again. None of your classmates knew where you lived. I've been wandering this neighborhood for an hour until a local lady pointed me here. I'm sorry, I said, reaching for my keys. Look at your phone once in a while, Xiao. I called you a dozen times. I left it inside today, I muttered. Do you want to come in? She followed me inside. My apartment was small and the appliances were ancient, but it was clean. I could see her relaxing as she sat on my faded sofa. I brought her a glass of water. It was all I had. Teacher, I know the exam is only 28 days away, I said before she could start. I haven't given up. She looked at my clothes, the cheapest, most basic fabric available, and her expression softened. She reached into her bag and pulled out 10 packets of body tempering powder, lining them up on the table. I don't make a huge salary, she said softly, but I want you to have these. I can only support you this much for now. Teacher Sue said, her voice heavy with a mix of guilt and hope. The slaughterhouse is fine for a while, but you must go there less. Try to break through to the next minor realm. Teacher Sue, really, you don't have to do this, I started, but she cut me off with a sharp wave of her hand. That's enough, she insisted. I have things to do. Don't bother seeing me out. Just get a good score on the exam. That's all the thanks I need. She stood up and left before I could say another word. I looked at the 10 packets of body tempering powder sitting on my table and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Was this what it felt like to have a benefactor? Having a teacher like this was a blessing I hadn't expected. I'll give you a real surprise when the time comes, I whispered to the empty room. I didn't waste any time. I grabbed the powder and began to absorb it directly. Experience points plus 5,000. I felt a rush of energy. It was time to break through. As the power flowed into my veins, it felt like a dam bursting, but without any of the pain. The energy surged through my limbs, meeting zero resistance. Just like that, I reached the 6th level of the martial apprentice realm. The medicinal properties of the blood-replenishing chi pill I'd taken earlier were still lingering in my system. Instead of the usual post-breakthrough exhaustion, I felt a refreshing wave of clarity. First-grade pills were truly worth the price. They saved so much trouble. I made a mental note to thank Wang Yong again later. I owed that man a lot. I pulled up my status panel. Name, Guoxiao Realm. 6th level martial apprentice, 1/16th, 000. Cultivation, Northern Brightness Divine Art, Max, Techniques, Basic Gymnastics, Beginner, Basic Combat, Beginner, Basic Sword Technique, Small Success, Basic Movement, Beginner. Current XP, 7,014. Passive gain, 6 points per minute. I sat on the sofa, staring at the glowing numbers, lost in thought until sleep finally took me. The next morning, I woke up early and headed to the breakfast stall downstairs. Boss, 3 meat buns and a bowl of soy milk. I called out. 3 buns, 1 soy milk. Coming right up, the waiter shouted back. The place had an old-school vibe, like a bustling tavern from a historical drama. When the tray arrived, I noticed an extra boiled egg sitting there. Is this mine? I asked. The boss's wife gave it to you. The waiter replied, pointing toward the counter. I looked over and saw the couple busy at the steamers. They caught my eye and gave me a warm, knowing nod before returning to work. I'd been coming to Aid's breakfast stall for a long time. Back when I was broke and living on plain steamed bread, they'd noticed. Now that I was a regular, they always tucked extra food into my order. A bun here, an egg there, and they never charged me for the extras. I finished my meal and paid the full price. I didn't need to pinch pennies anymore. I had 3,000 yuan from my advance, which would last a normal person months. For a martial artist, it was barely a drop in the bucket, but with my system, I didn't have to worry about starving. I was already at the 6th level. By tonight, I'd hit the 7th. That was the benchmark for the elite universities. With 27 days left, I might even break into the true martial artist realm. When I arrived at the Yongxing slaughterhouse, I looked at the cages of chickens and ducks. To everyone else, they were livestock. To me, they were stacks of experience points. Asterisk swish. Swish, asterisk. My dagger blurred. I struck 2 ducks in their cages with a single, fluid motion. I stared at the blade in my hand, stunned. So this is small success in sword technique. Yesterday, I'd felt the smoothness, but today I saw the power. The gap between beginner and small success was a literal canyon. It made me wonder just how lethal great success would be. Because I'd reached the 6th level, my speed and strength had increased across the board. I moved through the station like a whirlwind. Did Guoxiao take the wrong meds today? One of the other workers whispered. Why is he looking at those birds like they killed his parents? He's killing them way too fast, another grumbled. You only need 500 to hit the quota. He's overdoing it. Outside the slaughterhouse, a different kind of energy was brewing. Hello, viewers, a bright, cheerful girl chirped into a camera. A group of 3 beautiful girls stood near the entrance, shaded by a tree. Their live stream chat was exploding with heart emojis and fans arguing over who was the true goddess. Guess where we are? The leader asked, smiling as the cameraman panned around to show the gritty industrial background of the slaughterhouse. Is that where the butcher works? A comment flashed on the screen. The girl laughed. Exactly. We're at the place where our school's famous butcher spends his time. The girls were the heads of the Honghai Middle School news department. They were all 7th level apprentices, but they knew they wouldn't hit the 8th level before the exams. Instead of training, they decided to chase the hottest trend on the school forums, me. Inside, I was completely oblivious. I was staring at my updated stats. Basic sword technique, small success, 398/10,000. Current XP, 9,170. At this rate, I'd hit great success in half a month. I checked the time, wiped the blood off my apron, and prepared to head home for a quick rest before the afternoon shift. Look, he's coming out, the girls shouted to their camera. I stepped into the sunlight, squinting, only to find a camera lens and 3 popular girls from my school blocking my path. I looked at the three girls standing in front of me. They were pretty enough, but their makeup was way too thick. One of them wore lipstick so bright it hurt to look at, and the girl next to her held her chin so high she looked like a preening peacock. I gave them a mental failing grade and frowned. "Do I know you?" I asked. The three of them rolled their eyes simultaneously. "Of course you do," they said in unison. "We're all from class 5. "Oh, it's you guys," I said, rubbing my eyes. "Sorry, I had some sand in my eyes. I didn't see you clearly." One of the girls laughed. "I can't believe there's someone who doesn't recognize our school goddesses. Is he a moron?" "He's actually kind of handsome," another whispered. "He just needs a better haircut." I noticed a guy nearby holding a phone, pointing it directly at me. I couldn't tell if he was taking photos or filming a video. "What do you want?" I asked. The girl in the center stepped forward. "Student Guo, I'm Wang Xin, president of the school's news department. These are my vice presidents, Chun Jingya and Lin Yu. And this is our cameraman, Li Si." After introducing her team to the small crowd gathering around us, she continued, "We heard you've been working at a slaughterhouse lately. We'd like to interview you." "Interview me?" I repeated. I looked at them for a moment, and a thought occurred to me. "This is a serious matter," I said solemnly. "Let me start over. I'll come out again." The livestream comments were losing it. "This guy is so extra," someone typed. "I love how serious he's taking this." Nearly 100,000 people were watching the stream now. I turned around and walked back toward the entrance of the Yongxing slaughterhouse. I stood there for a second, straightened my clothes, and composed my face. The viewers watched with bated breath. I stepped out again, walking toward the news team with a cold expression. The girls smiled, ready to start their questions. "Student Guo." "Get lost," I said. The word was cold and sharp. I didn't wait for a reaction. I just walked right past them and kept going without looking back. Behind me, the girls froze like statues. Nobody had ever treated them like that, especially since they were famous internet goddesses. The chat went wild. "Holy crap, that was legendary." When the girls finally snapped out of it, their faces turned ugly. I could tell they wanted to beat me up right then and there, but with 100,000 people watching, they had to maintain their image. "Maybe we're just not pretty enough," Wang Xin said to the camera, her voice trembling with fake sadness. "He doesn't care about our interview. It's so heartbreaking." "Yeah," the others chimed in, looking dejected. They were pros at playing the victim, immediately turning the embarrassment into a way to make the audience hate me. "Next time I see him, I'll make him kneel and apologize to you," one fan commented. The girls had successfully deflected their shame and painted a target on my back. None of us realized that this tiny interaction was about to explode across the entire internet. The news team was famous now, and so was I. In a mansion owned by the Lin family, a middle-aged man watched the video on his phone. "Just a piece of trash," he muttered, his eyes full of malice. "I'll let you live a little longer." In another room, a young man's phone buzzed. "Brother Kai, check this video I sent you. Your girl is being bullied." The man, Kai, immediately opened the link. He watched Wang Xin look sad in the video and felt his heart ache. Then he saw me. "Get lost," I said on the screen. "Guo, you're dead," Kai hissed. He picked up his phone and made a call. "Find a chance to teach Guo a lesson. Don't kill him, just mess him up. Don't worry, Brother Kai. The exams are coming up, so we won't go too far." Later that day, my boss, Wang Yong, called me. "Ah Xiao, did you offend someone?" "Offend someone?" "No," I said. "I've been keeping my head down." "Then what happened?" Wang Yong sighed. "I just got calls from friends in the martial arts guild and the prosecutor's office. They told me to fire you immediately if I don't want trouble." I remembered the girls from the morning. Was it because of those news department girls? Wang Yong let out a bitter laugh. "Do you have any idea who is behind that department? They're all spoiled brats with powerful families. You told them to get lost on a live stream. You humiliated them. Are they really that petty?" I asked. "To people with money and power, face is everything. You didn't give them any." "I understand," I said, feeling a weight in my chest. "I won't cause you any more trouble, boss. Let's settle my wages. I still owe you for that 3,000 I borrowed." "Forget the money," Wang Yong said hurriedly. "It's not much. Look, another call is coming in. Just stay inside for a while, okay?" The line went dead. "What a mess," I muttered. I had taken a nap and woken up jobless. I thought about my options. I had planned to wait until I hit the 7th level and mastered my sword technique before heading into the wilderness. The wild was dangerous, but danger meant opportunity. If the city was closing its doors on me, I had to leave. I walked into a weapon shop. A long Quan sword hung on the wall, looking magnificent. "How much for this one?" I asked the owner. I looked at the tag, 200,000 yuan. I looked at a meteor hammer, 300,000 yuan. A willow leaf saber, 200,000 yuan. My head started to spin. I couldn't afford any of this. "Do you have anything cheaper?" I asked. The owner didn't even look up. He just pointed toward a back room. I walked through the door into a larger, more crowded area. People glanced at me and then went back to their business. "Can I help you?" a young salesgirl asked. "I need a sword," I said. "For practicing basic techniques?" "Follow me." She didn't seem to mind my ragged clothes. She led me to a rack of iron swords. "This one is 12,000 yuan. "Cheaper?" I asked. "This steel sword is 7,000. "Even cheaper," I said, feeling my face heat up. "As cheap as possible." "Wait here," she said. She disappeared for a few minutes and returned holding a sword in a plain wooden scabbard. I couldn't even tell what it was made of. The sword looked plain, maybe even a little crude. "This bronze sword is only 3,000 yuan, the girl said. "It's the cheapest one we have." "I'll take it," I replied instantly. I walked out of the shop and let out a long, heavy sigh. I reached into my pocket and felt around. I had less than 500 yuan left to my name. If I didn't get out of the city and kill some monsters for cash, I wouldn't even be able to afford food in a few days. I headed toward the city gates. The area was a chaotic mess, smelling of sweat and adrenaline. It felt like a crowded marketplace, but instead of vegetables, people were trading lives. Heading out 100 miles to kill mad bee wolves. Anyone with guts. Gathering medicinal herbs. Need martial apprentice level guards. High pay, act fast. Buying mad bee wolf pelts. Buying three-eyed fox fur. Shouts echoed everywhere. Suddenly, a man with a bare, muscular chest and dark brown trousers stepped into my path. He had a massive axe balanced casually on his shoulder. "Hey, little brother," he said, his voice booming. "Want to hunt some beasts with us?" I looked at him, then at the gate. "No thanks," I said. "I'm waiting for a friend." He laughed, not taking offense. "Haha, no worries. Maybe next time." He turned and walked back to his crew. One of his teammates leaned in, whispering loud enough for me to hear. "Captain, that kid is clearly just a 5th-level apprentice. If he'd said yes, he would have just been a drag on us." The captain shrugged. "It doesn't matter." He said no, didn't he? "Besides, doesn't he remind you of how we used to be?" The teammate paused, then nodded. "Yeah, just as broke." I watched them leave and muttered to myself. A team actually sounded nice. It was my first time leaving the city, and a guide would have been useful. But with my northern brightness divine art, I was destined to work alone. I couldn't risk anyone seeing how I really trained. I didn't linger. I walked straight through the gates and out into the wild. Meanwhile, near my apartment, a group of thugs was loitering in the shadows. "Boss, how much longer?" one of them whined. "Let's just rush in and beat him up already." The leader smacked the subordinate hard on the back of the head. "Are you stupid? The exams are almost here. If we attack a student now, the authorities will hunt us down. You want to die?" The subordinate rubbed his head and went quiet, staring intently at the entrance to my building. A few minutes later, another lackey ran up. "Boss, I have good news and bad news." "Which one first?" "Give me the bad news," the leader growled. "Guo isn't home. We've been waiting for nothing." "And the good news?" "We don't have to keep watching the door." The leader's face went dark. He smacked the kid again. "Boss, why'd you hit me?" "I'm just reporting." "Because I felt like it," the leader snapped. "Keep talking, and I'll do it again." The kid shut his mouth and scurried a few feet away. "Where is he?" the leader asked. "Reliable sources say he went outside the city." "The wild? Which gate?" The lackey didn't hesitate this time. "North gate." The leader narrowed his eyes. "Fine, we're going to the north gate. We'll wait for him to come back." I had no idea I was being hunted. I was too busy staring at my first real target. A few meters ahead of me was a beast with a thick, white body and short, stubby legs. It had long ears like fans and a massive snout. But the most striking feature were the two curved, deadly tusks protruding from its mouth. It was a first-tier tusk boar. I racked my brain for the details I'd studied. The tusks were the most valuable part. They could be ground into powder for blacksmithing or alchemy. Its strength was around the 5th level of a martial apprentice, but because it was a beast, its raw power was closer to a 7th level human. "You're the one," I whispered. If the boar knew I was choosing it for my first time, it probably wouldn't have been honored. I crouched low, moving through the tall grass. My heart hammered against my ribs. I crept closer, 1 inch at a time. The boar suddenly lifted its head, sniffing the air. I froze. My breath hitched. Luckily, the brush was high enough to hide me. After a tense moment, the beast lowered its head again. I took another step. Snap! A dry branch broke under my boot. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet clearing. The tusked boar bolted upright. It turned and locked eyes with me. It hadn't realized I was so close. When it saw the bronze sword in my hand, it didn't just get scared, it got angry. It recognized the weapon. This was the thing that killed its kind and stole their tusks. It pawed the ground with its front hoof, lowered its head, and charged. "Holy crap!" I yelled. The boar was a white blur of muscle and rage. I panicked for a split second, then threw myself into a desperate roll. The boar thundered past me, the smell of its foul breath and wild musk hitting me like a physical wall. I scrambled to my feet and drew my sword. Shing! The boar turned, its eyes red with fury. It didn't want to run. It wanted me dead. It lunged again, but this time it leaped into the air, aiming those massive tusks straight at my chest. I didn't think. I just swung. My bronze sword slammed into its tusks with a metallic clang. The impact sent a shockwave up my arms. We both flew backward from the force. The boar skidded back 2 meters. I flew back 4. I stood up, my right hand trembling from the vibration. When you face a beast, do not panic. My instructor's voice echoed in my head. Asterisk, stay calm. Use your environment. Find the opening. Kill in 1 strike. Asterisk. I gripped the sword tighter. The boar was watching me now, hesitant. That strike to its tusks had hurt it, and I could see the confusion in its eyes. Usually, humans ran. This human bit back. The pain only made it angrier. It wasn't going to flee. This was a fight to the death. If I didn't kill this beast, I wouldn't be able to sleep tonight. The boar seemed to think the same thing. It stared at me, its small eyes assessing its prey. It realized I was just a human. It thought it could win. It thought this was its chance for revenge. I stood perfectly still. To the boar, I probably looked frozen in fear. It pawed the ground twice, let out a deafening roar, and charged. This time, it was faster. Much faster. The roar snapped me out of my daze. The beast covered the distance in a heartbeat. When it was only 2 meters away, it kicked off with its front hooves and launched itself into the air. It was a massive, hairy projectile aimed straight at my throat. I didn't panic. I watched it glide closer, every muscle in its body tensed for the kill. Just as it was about to collide with me, I took 1 precise step back. The boar whistled past my chest, missing me by 1 inch. I didn't waste the opening. I brought my bronze sword down in a heavy vertical cleave. The blade sank into the boar's skull without a hint of resistance. The beast hit the ground, gave 1 violent shudder, and went still. It was dead. Moments ago, it had been stronger than me. Now, it was just a carcass. I could see the confusion in its glazed eyes as the life faded out. It couldn't understand how a weak human had ended it so easily. It stared at me even in death, as if trying to kill me with its gaze. I looked down at the body and sighed. "Don't blame me, brother pig," I muttered. "I hope you have a better life next time. Maybe be a pet pig or something." Then, a thought struck me. I checked the clearing to make sure I was alone. No one was watching. I knelt down and placed my hand on the boar's head. "Northern brightness, divine art," I whispered. I activated the technique. The boar's body began to shrivel and shrink before my eyes. Its blood and flesh were being converted directly into pure energy. Within seconds, all that was left was a hollowed-out hide. Experience points plus 5,000. 5,000 points. My heart skipped a beat. This was dangerous, sure, but it was incredibly fast. Killing chickens and ducks at the slaughterhouse felt like a joke compared to this. I looked at the leftover skin on the ground and slapped my forehead. Damn it, I should have taken the tusks off first. Those were worth a lot of money. Whatever, At least I have the hide. It should still fetch a decent price. The sky was getting dark. Nighttime was when the real monsters came out to play, and I didn't want to be stuck in the wilderness after sunset. I rolled up the boar skin, tucked it under my arm, and started the long trek back to the city. By the time I reached the bustling market inside the city gates, the torches were lit. The place was alive with shouts. Freshly made hemostatic powder. Detoxification pills here. Buying monster cores and materials. Hunters and gatherers were flooding back from the outskirts, desperate to turn their loot into hard cash. Shopkeepers and scouts from big firms were everywhere, hunting for bargains. I scanned the stalls and stopped at one buying raw materials. "Boss," I said, leaning over the counter. "Do you take boar hides?" The young guy behind the stall looked up. He saw the bundle in my hand and nodded. "Yeah, we take him. Don't worry, there are plenty of buyers here, but I'll give you a fair shake." "What's the price?" I asked. "Usually between 1,000 and 5,000, he said, eyeing me. I looked young, and he probably thought I was a rookie. "That's the market rate. We're in this for the long term, so we don't cheat people." I didn't say anything. I just unrolled the hide and laid it out on his table. The young man froze. The skin was perfect. Not a single scratch or tear except for the clean kill strike at the head. "This is so complete," he whispered. "Kid, I'll give you 5,000 for it," someone shouted from a neighboring stall. "I'll give you 5,500, another chimed in. The collectors were swarming now. They'd ignored me when I walked up, but a high-quality hide like this was rare. 10,000, the young guy at the stall barked, silencing the others. "Old Chun, that's not right," one of the others complained. "That skin is worth 8,000 max. You're overpaying." "I've got the cash," Chun replied with a smirk. "If you can beat it, go ahead. Otherwise, back off." The other buyers grumbled and retreated to their stalls. 10,000 was a massive overbid. 10,000? I asked, genuinely surprised. "I thought you said 5 was the limit?" Chun laughed. "Normally, hunters tear the skin or ruin it during the fight. A standard hide goes for 5. Yours is pristine. It's worth the premium. You selling?" "Yeah," I said. "Name's Chun. I'm here every day. If you get more stuff like this, bring it to me. I'll always give you the top rate." He turned to his assistant. "Shaolin, pack this up." Then he looked at me. "Bank transfer." I hesitated. Bank transfer? I was so poor I didn't even have a bank account. The most money I'd ever held at once was 5,000. "Can you do cash?" I asked. Chun looked at my worn-out clothes and seemed to understand. He nodded, reached into a drawer, and pulled out a thick stack of bills. He handed them over. "You should get a card, kid. Carrying this much cash isn't safe these days." "Thanks," I said, pocketing the money. "I'll look into it." I walked away, feeling the weight of the cash in my pocket. But as I moved through the crowd, I didn't notice the eyes following me. "Boss, look, isn't that the Guashao kid?" a thin lackey whispered, pointing a finger. A man in a leather jacket pulled out his phone, checked a photo, and grinned. "That's him, no doubt." "Boss, look, he just took a huge stack of cash from that stall." The leader's eyes turned greedy. "Move. We'll head to his place and wait. We'll beat him down, take the money, and then collect the reward from Brother Long. It's a double payday." "But boss, what if we can't beat him?" The leader cuffed him over the head. "Are you stupid? He's only at the 3rd level of the apprentice realm. I'm at the 5th level. Plus there's 4 of you at the 3rd level. He's one guy. What's he going to do?" "Oh, right. Yeah." I had no idea they were heading for my home. I wasn't in a rush to get back yet. I'd heard someone selling medical supplies earlier. This was my first time in the wild, and I'd realized how unprepared I was. If I was going to do this regularly, I needed gear. I found the stall again. "How much for the hemostatic powder and detox pills?" 2,000 a pack for the powder, the vendor said. "The pills are 10,000 a bottle. 10 pills per bottle." I looked at the dark pills on the table, curious. "What are these?" "Those are fasting pills," the vendor explained. "Take 3 a day, and you won't feel a single hunger pang. A bottle has 21 pills for $1,500. He then pointed to a different set. "These are vitality pills. They restore your physical strength. 5,000 per pill." I listened as he went through the inventory, but my heart sank. I couldn't afford most of this stuff. After doing the math, I hesitated, then made my move. I bought 2 packs of hemostatic powder and 4 bottles of fasting pills. Just like that, the money I'd made from the boar tusks and fur was gone. The clerk counted my 10,000 yuan and handed over the goods. Here you go, kid. 2 packs of powder for bottles of pills. I'll throw in this small waste bag for free. What's the difference between these fasting pills and the high-end ones? I asked. The effect, he shrugged. The real ones only require 1 pill a day to keep you full. Plus, these cheap ones taste like garbage. I wanted to ask more, but I had enough to worry about. I headed home. As I reached my door and pulled out my keys, I froze. My hand hovered over the lock. I heard muffled voices coming from inside my apartment. Boss, when is this kid coming back? I'm getting sleepy. Yeah, and this place is a dump. He doesn't even have a soda in the fridge. I listened for a moment, my pulse steady. From their conversation, I realized they were here to jump me. They didn't sound like pros. The leader was only at the 5th level of the apprentice realm, and the others were even lower. I let out a quiet breath of relief. I was at the 6th level now, and my basic sword technique had reached small success. Dealing with a few thugs wasn't going to be a problem. I shoved the key in, twisted the lock, and kicked the door open. My apartment was a mess. 4 guys were lounging on my sofa, looking like they owned the place. When they saw me, they jumped up with greedy grins. I stepped inside and used the scabbard of my sword to hook the door shut behind me. Click. Who are you? I asked, my voice cold. And what are you doing in my house? Boss, look at this kid, one of the lackeys laughed. Is he stupid? He locked himself in with us. Hand over the money, kid, the leader sneered. You've kept us waiting long enough. They started closing in, laughing. I didn't even draw my blade. I kept the bronze sword in its sheath and swung it like a bat. Whack! The first 3rd level thug didn't even see it coming. He flew backward, slamming into the guy behind him. They both hit the floor, groaning and clutching their ribs. Boss, help us. It hurts. The leader's face twisted in rage. You little brat. You're asking for it. In his eyes, I was still just a 3rd level weakling who got lucky with a surprise attack. He signaled to his remaining 2 men. They pulled out jagged daggers with a sharp shink sound. Drop the sword, the leader growled. I stood my ground, expressionless. He took my silence for fear. He nodded to his men, and they lunged at me, blades flashing. These guys weren't like the first 2. They were experienced street fighters. They weren't just looking to bruise me. They were going for blood. I watched them move. It felt slow. I swung the sheathed bronze sword again, putting my full strength behind it this time. Crack! Crack! The daggers clattered to the floor. Both men were sent flying back to where they started, collapsing in a heap. The leader crawled backward, his voice trembling. Wait, you're not at the 3rd level. What are you? I walked toward them, my shadow looming over the group. Who told you I was 3rd level? Panic set in. Their boss, a 5th level fighter, had been swatted away like a fly. Let us go, the leader yelled, trying to regain some bravado. Pay for our medical bills, or Brother Long will never let this go. I put on a mock look of terror. Oh no, I'm so scared. The leader didn't see the glint in my eyes. He thought I was actually folding. Good. Now help us up, and I silenced him with a kick to the gut that sent him face first into the floor. Who is Brother Long? I asked. And why did he send you? Let us go, you bastard. Brother Long knows we're here. If we don't return, you're dead. I looked at them, bored. If I let you go, you'll just bring more people. If I don't. I paused, leaning in. I don't have time to play games. Tell me about Brother Long. They didn't answer. They just lay there moaning, ignoring me. My patience snapped. Fine. Don't talk. I knelt down and placed my hand on one of the lackeys' heads. I felt the northern brightness divine art stir within me. I began to circulate the technique, and the air in the room seemed to turn cold. The man beneath my hand began to thrash. Boss, save me. What's happening? Save me. The leader watched in pure, unadulterated horror. A warm liquid began to seep through his pants as he lost control of his bladder. Before his eyes, his men began to wither. Their flesh seemed to melt away, their bodies shrinking into nothing but skin and bone. Their screams grew weak, then turned into rasps, and finally faded into silence. Within moments, the men were gone. All that remained were piles of warm clothes on the floor. System, experience points plus 9,000. I turned my gaze to the leader. Speak. I don't know, he shrieked, his mind snapping. I only know Brother Long told us to teach you a lesson. Demon. You're a demon. Stay away from me. He was hysterical, rambling nonsense. I realized I wasn't going to get anything more out of him. He was broken. I placed my hand on his head. The northern brightness divine art surged again. A few seconds later, another pile of clothes hit the floor. System, experience points plus 5,000. I didn't feel like a hero. As the leader of the thugs dissolved into nothingness, I couldn't hold it back anymore. I bolted for the bathroom and collapsed over the toilet, retching until my stomach burned. It was horrific. Dissecting a corpse in a lab was one thing, but watching a living man turn into a hollow shell of skin and bone right in front of me was something else entirely. The northern brightness divine art was efficient, but it was ugly. I stayed there until I was coughing up bitter bile, waiting for the nausea to fade. Once I could breathe again, I reached into my small hip bag and pulled out a tailbone pill. It smelled like rotting trash and tasted even worse, sour, pungent, and foul. I gagged as I swallowed it, but the effect was instant. The hollow hunger in my gut vanished, and my mind finally cleared. I walked back into the living room. Piles of clothes lay scattered across the floor where the men had been. I looked at the fabric. The quality was definitely better than the rags I was wearing, but there was no way I was touching anything that belonged to them. I spent the next hour cleaning. I threw the discarded clothes and the broken bits of my furniture into the trash bins outside. When I finished, the apartment looked decent again. At least the thugs left me a parting gift. I picked up the leader's smartphone from the floor. It was sleek, expensive, and miles ahead of my old junker. Suddenly, the phone vibrated. A name flashed on the screen, Brother Long. I hesitated, then swiped to answer. I didn't say a word. Xiaozhong. How'd it go? A voice asked. When I didn't respond, the tone shifted. Who is this? Xiaozhong, what happened to you? Didn't you send them to find me? I asked coldly. There was a sharp silence on the other end. You're just a level 3 martial apprentice. How could a broke kid like you beat Xiaozhong and his crew? Believe it or not, they're gone, I said. Just tell me who paid you to come after me. The man laughed, a dry, dangerous sound. So you're really Guoxiao. I didn't think you'd be hiding this deep. Planning to shock everyone at the Big 5 exams, are you? I asked you a question. I started, but the line went dead. I tried calling back, but it went straight to voicemail. He had blocked me. I didn't waste any more time. I popped the SIM card out, snapped it, and tossed it in the trash. I put my own card in the new phone and sat down on the sofa. I checked my status panel. Realm, Level 6 Martial Apprentice, 1/16th, 000, Cultivation, Northern Brightness Divine Art, Max Level, Skills, Basic Body Techniques, Level 18, Basic Combat, 15/1, 000, Basic Sword, Small Success, Basic Movement, 35/1, 000, Experience Points, 32,680. My eyes widened. My experience points had skyrocketed. I also noticed my basic movement skill had jumped from 5 points to 35 points just from that brief scuffle. My instructor was right. Real combat was the fastest way to grow. I leaned back, thinking about my fight with the tusk boar earlier that day. I'd been terrified. Even though I'd died once in my past life, the sight of a monster charging at me had frozen my blood. At level 6, I should have been stronger, but the boar's raw power was insane. I was lucky to be alive. But then I looked at my experience points again. 32,806. It was still ticking up by 6 points every minute. It was a beautiful sight. I didn't hesitate. I dumped my points into my cultivation. I felt a massive surge of heat explode in my chest. My cells screamed as they devoured the energy, expanding and hardening. I felt a thin barrier in my mind snap like a piece of paper. System breakthrough. Level 7 Martial Apprentice reached. There was no bottleneck or struggle. It was smooth and instant. I wondered if it would be this easy when I tried to become a true martial artist. But the breakthrough came with a price. My stomach growled with a ferocity that made me wince. I ate another tailbone pill, but the hunger only barely subsided. I realized then that every time I broke through, my body needed massive amounts of physical energy to stabilize. The system gave me the progress, but it couldn't create matter out of thin air. Martial arts really was a rich man's game. Without money for high-grade supplements, I'd eventually starve myself to death just by leveling up. I shook the thought away. I still had 17,041 experience points left. I wasn't going to hoard them. Strength was the only thing that mattered for the exams. I focused on my basic sword technique and basic movement, pouring the remaining points into them. A flood of memories and muscle reflexes slammed into my brain. It felt like I was spending years in a training hall, swinging a blade and dodging shadows until the movements became as natural as breathing. The information for my basic sword technique and basic movement flooded into my mind. It felt like I had always known these moves. Suddenly, my consciousness shifted, just like it had back at the slaughterhouse. I was back in that mysterious space. Shadowy figures were everywhere. Some were practicing sword forms. Others were moving with impossible speed. I focused my eyes, staring hard at one of the figures practicing the sword. It was clearer than before, though still a bit blurry. There was something strangely familiar about the way it moved. The next second, my consciousness snapped back into my body. My head throbbed. I felt a wave of dizziness so intense I could barely stand. It was the mental tax for receiving so much information and entering that space. I made a mental note to be careful in the future. If I got stuck in that trance during a fight, I'd be a sitting duck. The dizziness got worse. My vision blurred, and my legs felt like lead. I collapsed onto my sofa and fell into a deep, heavy sleep. When I woke up the next morning, I checked my stats immediately. I whistled. My sword technique had reached the Grandmaster level, and my movement was at small success. But seeing that I needed 100,000 points to level up my sword skill again made my jaw drop. That was a massive number. It took less than half that to level up my entire cultivation realm. I washed up in the bathroom and looked in the mirror. My hair was a mess, long and wild. I needed a haircut, but I didn't want to spend the money. I found a piece of string and tied it back into a makeshift ponytail. It looked like a ridiculous butterfly knot, but I didn't care. Actually, I'm pretty handsome, I muttered. Even in my coarse, cheap clothes, the change in hairstyle made me look sharper. More like a martial artist and less like a beggar. I grabbed my things and headed out. I needed to go to the bank. Carrying a wad of cash in this city was just asking for trouble. "Guashao," a voice called out. I turned and saw my homeroom teacher, Su Qing. Standing next to her was a girl who looked about my age. "Hello, Teacher Su," I said. "Call me Sister Qing," she corrected me with a smile. "When we're outside of school, I prefer it." "Right. Sorry, teacher." She sighed and shook her head. "Where are you heading?" "The bank," I told her honestly. "I've got too much cash on me. I'm worried someone might try to rob me." The girl next to her let out a sudden snort of laughter. She looked at my ragged clothes and then at my face, clearly thinking that no thief would ever bother with someone who looked as poor as me. "Su Lin." Su Qing snapped, giving the girl a stern look. So her name was Su Lin. She seemed a bit airhead. "I'm sorry, sister," Su Lin whispered, realizing she'd been rude. Su Qing turned back to me, looking embarrassed. "I'm sorry, Guashao. This is my younger sister, Su Lin." She didn't mean anything by it. "It's fine," I said. "I should get going before the bank gets crowded." Su Qing checked her watch. It was almost 9. "You're right. Go get that sorted. Then head home and focus on your training. I'm expecting great things from you at the Big 5 exams." I nodded. "I'll do my best." Before I could finish my sentence, Su Lin was already dragging her sister away. They seemed to be in a massive rush. I watched them go, wondering why a teacher was always so frantic. "Was that your student?" I heard Su Lin ask as they walked away. "Yes," Su Qing replied. "From his clothes, I bet he's level 3 at most," Su Lin said confidently. "Around there," Su Qing sighed. "He's a good kid, just from a poor family. If he had better resources, he'd be much higher." "No way," Su Lin bragged. "Even if he were level 9, I'd still beat him. I'm going to be the top scorer in the national exams this year." "Don't be so arrogant," Su Qing warned. "There are already 2 students in Class 1 who hit level 9. You know them, Yi Luo and Yi Tian." "What? How are they so fast? If you spent less time playing and more time practicing, you'd be there too." I didn't hear the rest of their conversation. If I had, I would have been shocked to learn that the airhead girl was actually a level 8 martial apprentice. Getting a bank card in this world turned out to be a nightmare. I thought it would take 10 minutes, but they required iris scans and fingerprinting for all 10 fingers. When I jokingly asked if they needed my toe prints too, the clerk deadpanned and told me it was recommended if I wanted extra security. I shut up after that. By the time I left the bank, it was nearly noon. I checked my experience points, 11,526. I headed toward the North City gate of Honghai City. I had to walk because the bank fees had eaten up almost all the cash I had left. I only had about $20 to my name. My destination was the same area where I'd fought the tusk boar yesterday. I'd heard rumors at the market that the tusk boar territory was usually avoided by other martial artists. Even though they were technically level 5 monsters, their strength was closer to level 7. Their tusks didn't sell for much, and they usually hunted in pairs. Meeting a lone one like I did yesterday was rare. Most high-level apprentices didn't think they were worth the effort. But for me, I didn't care about the money. I needed the experience points. And if no one else wanted to hunt them, that just meant more for me. I needed a place where no one would bother me. It wasn't about the money, it was about the privacy. I needed a quiet spot to use my Northern Brightness divine art and suck up experience points without drawing unwanted attention. If anyone saw what I was doing, it would mean nothing but trouble. I had already made up my mind yesterday. Until the exam started, I was going to camp out in the tusk boar territory. As I walked along the main road outside the city, cars occasionally sped past me. I watched them with a hint of envy. To own a car in this world, you had to be at least at the martialist realm. I wondered when I'd finally reach that level. Higher realms meant killing higher-level monsters, which meant even more experience points. I shook my head, clearing the thoughts. Now wasn't the time for daydreaming. I had to take this one step at a time. My first small goal: break through to the martialist realm. I eventually found the spot. The grass that had been trampled and destroyed during my fight yesterday had already grown back. The spiritual energy in the air really did change everything, even the growth cycles of plants. I started wandering around, looking for my targets. I wasn't the same person I was yesterday. My cultivation had hit the 5th level, my basic sword technique had reached Grandmaster status, and even my movement technique had improved to small success. My strength was growing by leaps and bounds every single day. I was itching for a fight to test my new limits. Speak of the devil, right ahead of me, 2 tusk boars were lounging on the ground. A sudden surge of playfulness hit me. I struck a cocky pose and shouted at them. "Hey, come over here. Come and get me." I expected them to jump up and charge. Instead, they just stayed there, looking at me with what I could only describe as pure disdain. I swear I could see it in their eyes. They thought I was an idiot. Being mocked by 2 pigs was not on my schedule for today. I grabbed a few pebbles from the ground and hurled them with everything I had. Asterisk thwack. Thwack. Asterisk. My aim was a bit off, but I managed to hit them both. That did the trick. They squealed in anger and scrambled to their feet. "That's more like it," I muttered, satisfied. I gripped the hilt of my bronze sword and charged first. Seeing me rush them only made them more furious. They dug their front hooves into the dirt and lunged toward me. I let out a loud shout as they closed the gap. Bring it on. The scene felt a bit ridiculous, like something out of a cheesy anime, but luckily no one was around to see it. I unleashed my basic sword technique. I lunged, slashed, and swept my blade in a blur of motion. Within seconds, tiny cuts began appearing all over the boar's thick hides. I wasn't in a hurry to kill them. I was using them as live practice for my newly mastered sword forms. Every time they tried to gore me, I slipped away effortlessly. My improved movement technique was incredible. Yesterday, dodging 2 of them would have been a desperate struggle. Today, I was practically playing with them. I felt lighter, more agile. My speed had only increased by maybe 30%, but the fluidity made it feel like I was on a completely different level. After getting a feel for my new power, I looked at the 2 bleeding boars. Time to wrap this up. I finished them off quickly and moved in. I had to touch them with my hands to trigger the Northern Brightness divine art. It wasn't as convenient as the real version from the stories, but it worked. Experience points plus 10,000. I didn't even bother with the tusks or the hides this time. Carrying that heavy stuff back to sell for a bit of cash wasn't worth the time. Experience was my only priority. I cleaned my blade and started looking for the next group. "Little friend, this is no place for someone like you." The voice came out of nowhere, echoing around me. I spun around, scanning the trees, but saw no one. I thought I was hallucinating for a second until the voice spoke again. Up here. I looked up. An old man was standing on a tree branch, stroking his long beard and looking down at me. To him, I probably looked like a typical high school kid, fifth-level martial apprentice, cheap clothes, clearly from a poor family. In this world, someone like me shouldn't have had high-level techniques or the gear to survive out here alone. Why can't I be here? I asked. What makes you think you can be here? The old man countered. My strength, I said simply. The old man laughed, looking at me with an amused expression. Based on your fifth-level cultivation? I could tell he wasn't a threat. If he wanted me dead, he could have killed me before I even knew he was there. I stayed calm, and the sword in my hand. He looked at my weapon, a cheap, nicked bronze blade made by some low-level apprentice. That piece of scrap metal? That depends on whose hand it's in, I replied. In my hand, it's a legendary blade. The old man went silent. He didn't know how to argue with that. He probably hated my "the world is mine" attitude, but he couldn't deny the conviction in my voice. If social martial artists can hunt beasts at the 5th level, why can't I? I added, a martial artist should be self-reliant and relentless. Well said. The old man sighed, looking genuinely moved. He seemed to be lost in a memory of 500 years ago when the beasts first arrived and humanity had to fight for every inch of ground. Back then, everyone was ordinary, and they still fought. He looked at me and then seemed to drift off into deep thought. While he was reminiscing, I was secretly panicking. Is he deciding how to kill me? Should I run? Should I play dead? Asterisk. My mind was racing with exit strategies. The old man snapped out of his trance and saw the look on my face. He stopped stroking his beard and huffed. Do I look like some bloodthirsty monster to you? Infuriating kid. He reached into his robe, pulled out a manual, and tossed it down. It landed right at my feet. By the time I looked back up, he was gone. I stood there, jaw dropped, staring at the empty air. The old man hadn't just walked away, he had literally taken flight. He soared into the sky and vanished. I looked down at the manual he had tossed at my feet. 3 words were written on the cover, drawing sword technique. Looking at those words, my mind drifted to a certain legendary character from my past life. You know the one. The lower he held his head, the stronger he became. I shook the thought away. I needed to focus on reality. I tucked the manual into my robe and started heading back toward the city. This wasn't the place to start reading. If I got too absorbed in the technique and a beast ambushed me, I'd be dead before I could turn the page. Back in the bustling streets of Honghai City, I stopped by a familiar stall. The young clerk, Shaolin, recognized me and waved. Hey Shaolin, I said. You're pretty young. Why are you working here instead of studying? Don't laugh at me, brother, he said with a sheepish grin. My family is poor. Luckily, Boss Chin took me in. I come here to help out whenever I have free time. My urgency to get home faded a bit. I felt a kinship with him. I pulled out my loot. Help me see how much these are worth. Shaolin skillfully inspected the 2 tusker boar pelts I had harvested. The sword punctures are a bit numerous on these too, but the overall integrity is good. We can give you 3,000 yuan. Deal, I said. I didn't care about haggling. Killing those boars had been effortless anyway. Cash, he asked, reaching for a drawer. Bank transfer this time, I replied. Shaolin stopped and grabbed a device from the counter. He aimed it at my face. A screen flickered, instantly pulling up my banking information. It was my first time seeing this tech in person. I checked the details carefully. Everything was correct. The model is a bit old, but it's accurate, Shaolin explained. I heard the newest scanners can read your info just by looking at you from a distance. High-tech stuff. That's convenient, I muttered. All right, the money is sent. You should get a notification any second. Just as he finished speaking, my phone vibrated in my bag. I checked it. The text was there. The transfer was instant. After chatting with Shaolin for a bit longer to learn about other gadgets, I finally headed home. The moment I hit the sofa, I pulled out the drawing sword technique. I flipped through the pages, soaking in every word. As I finished the last page, my vision blurred. My consciousness was pulled back into that mysterious gray space. What's happening? I whispered. I can enter this place just by reading a manual? Shadowy figures appeared around me. They weren't fighting monsters. They were practicing the technique I had just read. I didn't focus on their faces this time. I watched their hands. The movements were simple. Draw, sheath, draw, sheath. As time passed in that void, the figures moved faster and faster. Eventually, the blade leaving the scabbard and returning to it happened in a single heartbeat. The sword was out, it struck, and it was back before the eye could even register the steel. My mind snapped back to my living room. I pulled up my attribute panel. Under my skills, a new entry had appeared, drawing sword technique. It was already at the small success stage. I was stunned. How? Maybe it was because my basic sword technique was already at Grandmaster level. Or maybe this technique was just inherently simple. Either way, I didn't complain. I stood up in the middle of the living room and gripped the hilt of my bronze sword. I aimed at a tiny protrusion on the wall. Shing! The small piece of the wall fell to the floor. My sword was already back in its scabbard. I hadn't even seen my own hand move. The power was one thing, but the speed? It was several times faster than before. I checked my experience points. I had 23,206 points saved up. I didn't hesitate. I dumped them all. I pushed my basic movement and drawing sword technique both to Grandmaster level. I even bumped my basic combat to small success. Whatever was left, I poured into my cultivation level. Suddenly, a massive flood of information crashed into my brain. It felt like a tidal wave hitting a brick wall. Asterisk crap. I forgot how much this hurts, asterisk I thought. My mind was dragged back into the mysterious space, but I was too exhausted to watch the shadows. My head felt like it was filled with lead. I needed to sleep. I stayed in that hazy state for what felt like forever until my consciousness finally returned to my body. I collapsed on the sofa and blacked out. When I finally opened my eyes, the clock told me 2 days had passed. I had slept for 48 hours straight. That was reckless. I groaned, rubbing my temples. I wonder if the Big Five schools have techniques to increase mental strength. I'm going to need them. I pulled up my stats one more time. Name, Wishao. Level, 7th level martial apprentice. Cultivation, Northern Brightness Divine Art, Max. Skills, drawing sword technique, Grandmaster. Basic movement, Grandmaster. Basic sword, Grandmaster. Experience, 13,440, 7 points generated per minute. I took a deep breath. With this setup, who in Honghai High School could possibly stop me? I was confident that no student in my school was my match. As for the rest of the city, I stayed humble. There was always a bigger fish. Later that day, I stood over the carcasses of 3 tusker boars in the wild. I hadn't even broken a sweat. I've really become this strong? I muttered. One draw of my sword had instantly killed the first boar. My only regret was that my cultivation level wasn't high enough to unleash the full range of the strike. Even though the second boar was close, it only took a superficial wound. But my movement speed? With Grandmaster level footwork, I was 60% faster than before. At the martial apprentice realm, I was the undisputed king. I didn't linger to gloat. I absorbed the experience from the 3 boars, another 15,000 points, and pushed deeper into the wilds. I knew my limits now. In this realm, I was invincible. I didn't have to hold back anymore. Before, I was cautious, measuring every step, but now? As long as I didn't run into a level 2 demon beast, I was the apex predator in these woods. I felt sharp. I felt unstoppable. About 500 meters away, a young girl was locked in a desperate struggle with a tusker boar. Her clothes were torn, and her face was caked with dust and sweat. She looked pathetic. A group of people stood nearby, watching her every move. One woman, an archer, had her bow drawn and aimed straight at the beast. She was the safety net, ready to kill the boar the second the girl's life was truly in danger. "Is my dear little sister skipped breakfast?" a man in the group shouted, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "It's just a level 1, grade 5 beast. Why do you look like a drowned rat?" The girl's eyes flared with rage. She clearly wanted to drop the boar and punch him instead. "Yin Shan, knock it off," a rugged, burly man said, glancing at the girl. "That's your sister. Don't you care about her? She's at the 8th level of the martial apprentice realm," Yin Shan scoffed. "If she struggles this much against a grade 5 beast, she deserves a lecture. I'm being easy on her." The burly man, the leader of the group, watched the fight with a critical eye. It's her first time facing a demon beast. This performance is actually quite good. Before Yinshan could argue, the leader raised a hand. The fight is over. Xiao Jing, put the bow away. The archer obeyed. On the field, the Tusker boar didn't die from a wound. It collapsed from pure exhaustion. It literally couldn't move another inch. Seeing her chance, the girl lunged forward and drove her blade deep into the beast's skull. She slumped onto the dirt, gasping for air, looking completely unrefined. But she was smiling. Killing her first beast was a milestone worth celebrating. As the group approached her, Yinshan couldn't help himself. Killing a boar by making it run until its heart stops? That's a rare talent, sister. The girl, Yunxiui, just rolled her eyes. She had been fighting that thing for 2 hours. She didn't have the energy to argue. Don't listen to your brother, Xiao Jing, the archer, said as she helped her up. He was sweating bullets watching you. Shut up, Yinshan snapped. The burly leader, old Lu, looked at Yunxiui. That's enough for today. Take tomorrow off to reflect on what you learned. We'll head out again the day after. Thanks, Uncle Lu, she chirped. Old Lu's stern face crumbled instantly. I told you, call me Big Brother Lu. I'm not that old. The group burst into laughter. After a moment, Xiao Jing supported the exhausted Yunxiui, and they began their trek back. Suddenly, old Lu stopped. He signaled for silence. Someone's ahead, he whispered. This area was usually deserted. Finding someone out here was cause for concern. Monkey, get up there and check it out. A lean man, nicknamed Monkey, blurred into motion. He leaped 4 meters into the air, kicked off a trunk with 1 foot, and soared even higher. His cloud step technique is almost at the Grandmaster level, Xiao Jing whispered, impressed. I'm only at small success. I'm still at entry level, Yun Shui added. But my myriad trace steps are at small success. Monkey dropped back down a moment later. Captain, it's a kid. Actually, we've seen him before. We have. Yeah, the one you said reminded you of us when we were younger. Poor kid's luck has run out, though. There are 2 Tusker boars right in front of him. Monkey hadn't noticed the pile of boar hides I was carrying, or he wouldn't have been worried about my luck. Old Lu nodded. Oh, him. Let's head over. We have to pass that way anyway. If he's in trouble, we'll lend a hand. Yun Shui frowned. A student? Out here alone. He looked about your level, Monkey recalled. And pretty poor. Might be out here looking for a way to end it all. Yinshan smirked. Probably. Yun Shui's heart raced. She knew how terrifying those boars were after her 2-hour ordeal. How could a lone student survive 2 of them? I was walking down the path when I suddenly sneezed. Is someone talking about me? I rubbed my nose and looked up. My eyes lit up. 2 Tusker boars were lounging right ahead. Talk about a payday. More experience points were literally walking toward me. I picked up a stone and kicked it with a sharp crack. It soared through the air and slammed into the lead boar's head. Both beasts scrambled up, snorting in fury. The group watching from the trees went silent. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Is he insane? Yinshan hissed. He's not running. He's provoking them. See? Monkey whispered. I told you. He's got a death wish. Yun Shui's face went pale. She recognized me. Wait, that's my classmate. That's Guo. He's only at the 3rd level of the martial apprentice realm. We have to save him. She knew me as the famous poverty student from Honghai High School. To her, seeing me smile while facing 2 boars looked like the grin of a madman who had finally lost his mind. As the class monitor, she felt a sudden surge of responsibility. She had to save me, then give me a piece of her mind for being so reckless. Xiao Jing, old Lu barked. The archer raised her bow, but then her arms froze. I wasn't waiting for the boars to charge. I was running straight at them. At this distance, even a master archer couldn't intervene without hitting me. No. Yun Shui squeezed her eyes shut. She didn't want to see me get torn apart. Holy crap, old Lu gasped. Are you sure he's only at the 3rd level? I didn't know I had an audience. I just thought the boars were moving too slow. As I closed the gap, my hand blurred. My fingers gripped the hilt of my bronze sword. Flash. The drawing sword technique was a silver streak in the sunlight. The first boar's throat opened before it could even grunt. I didn't stop. I pivoted, the blade rising in a clean, vertical arc. The second boar dropped instantly, its skull split. I flicked the blood off the blade and sheathed it with a satisfying click. Wait, my hand tightened on the hilt again. I sensed movement. I spun around, eyes narrowing toward the bushes where the sound had come from. Someone was there. Watching me take down those two boars so easily, the guy they called Monkey couldn't help but swear under his breath. Even the big, burly leader turned to Yunxioi with a look of pure shock. He muttered that my strength had to be at least at the 9th level of the martial apprentice realm, maybe even higher. He noticed my hand tightening on my sword hilt again as I glared toward them. "Little brother, we mean no harm," the big man shouted, raising his hands. Beside him, Xiao Jing, the archer, finally opened her eyes. She had missed the entire fight because she was too scared to watch me get gored. When she saw me standing over the dead boars, she looked dazed. "Sister Jing, did you save him?" she asked softly. "It wasn't me," Xiao Jing replied, her voice trembling. "He killed them himself." Yunxioi was stunned. She had just fought a boar herself and knew how terrifyingly difficult they were to handle. Seeing me standing there, cold and alert, she finally poked her head out from behind the group. "Guoxiao," she called out. I stared at the group, wondering if I should just abandon my kills and run. That big guy was definitely a true martial artist. Look at those muscles. I wasn't even close to that level of physique. Then, a girl stepped out from behind him and yelled my name. Who was she? I searched my memory, but nothing came up. "Who are you?" I asked. Yunxioi froze. The rest of her team turned to look at her with expressions that clearly said, "Wait, didn't you say he was your classmate?" "Class monitor," she screamed, her face turning red. "I'm your class monitor." "Impossible," I said flatly. "I remember the class monitor is Ning Shuer. I know what she looks like. She was the monitor last year. This year it's me. It's me." Yunxioi was fuming. She and Ning Shuer were the most famous school beauties at Honghai High. How could I know the other girl, but not her? We had been in the same grade for 3 years. Even if she wasn't the monitor, I should have recognized her face. I stared at her, my mind racing through my memories. Wait, holy crap, she really is my classmate. What was wrong with the original owner of this body? How could he not recognize his own classmates? She was actually pretty cute, too. Maybe he was so buried in his own poverty and low self-esteem that he just blocked everyone out. A series of emotions flashed across my face: confusion, realization, and finally, embarrassment. The group watched me like they were watching a theater performance. "Oh, monitor," I said, giving her an apologetic look. "Sorry about that. The wind was so strong just now it got in my eyes. I couldn't see you clearly." The group stared at me. Wind. There wasn't even a breeze. I was lying through my teeth and doing it with a straight face. They all wanted to complain, but they stayed quiet. I was being incredibly shameless. The big leader, Lu Heng, let out a booming laugh. "Haha, Brother Guoxiao, you're a funny guy." I recognized that voice. "Uncle, have we met before?" "It's brother." Lu Heng corrected me instantly, looking wounded. "Call me Brother Lu, or just Lu Heng. I'm only 20. I just look a bit mature. Didn't I invite you to hunt with us a couple of days ago? You turned me down." "Oh, it's you, Uncle," I said. "It's brother." "Sure thing, Uncle." Lu Heng gave up. No matter how much he corrected me, I kept calling him Uncle. He turned a fierce glare toward Yunxioi, as if warning her that if she tried calling him Uncle, she was dead. She nodded frantically, terrified. "Anyway, if there's nothing else, I'll be going," I said. "I'm busy." They didn't believe me for a second. It was obvious I just wanted to get away from them. Well, everyone except Yunxioi realized that. She was too busy being curious. "Guoxiao, wait," she asked. "What's your actual cultivation level?" The others leaned in. They were only at the 5th level of the martial apprentice realm, and their mental power wasn't strong enough to sense someone else's rank yet. Only a true martial artist with chi could do that easily. "It's no secret," I said. 7th level. 7th level? They all shouted in unison. They had seen that sword strike. It was so fast it looked like something a true martial artist would do. They couldn't believe I was only at the 7th level. "Then why did the school record say you were only at the 3rd level?" Yunxioi asked, puzzled. "I had a cold that day," I lied smoothly. "I felt weak. I only hit the strength tester with about 300 pounds of force, so they assumed I was at the 3rd level." I watched them nod, actually believing my nonsense. I felt a bit guilty. My acting was terrible. How were they falling for this? Was I too cynical, or was everyone in this world just really naive? To be fair, nobody would ever guess I had jumped 4 levels in a few days. School strength testers were basic. They didn't account for hidden potential or illness. Right? See ya. I didn't wait for another question. I grabbed the 2 boars and took off like a shot. The team watched me disappear into the brush, totally speechless. Are we that scary? Lu Heng muttered. Did we frighten him? Yin Xiui, Xiao Jing asked. You didn't bully him at school, did you? Yin Xiui watched me run and asked herself the same thing. She didn't think she'd ever been mean to me. In fact, she was mostly annoyed that a girl as pretty as her didn't even get a second glance from me. Once I was far enough away, I let out a sigh of relief. I was worried they'd try to take my prey, but I'd managed to keep my prizes. Experience points were way more important than looking at a pretty girl. I touched the boars. Experience points plus 10,000. So good, I whispered, looking at the carcasses. Then I paused. I looked left. I looked right. Which way did I come from? I had been so desperate to get away and absorb the experience that I'd just run in a random direction. I checked my phone. It was past 5 p.m. The sun was going down, and that's when the real monsters came out to play. I was officially lost. I stood there, staring at the darkening woods, but then my brain finally kicked into gear. Wait a second. No matter how far I'd run, there was no way I had left the Honghai city perimeter by more than 100 miles. As long as I was within that range, what was I actually afraid of? The Martial Artist Guild organized a massive sweep every 3 years to clear out monsters within a 100-mile radius of the city. According to my memory, the last cleanup happened just 2 months ago. That meant the monster population was low right now, and most of them were weak. Even if I ran into a level 2 beast that I couldn't beat, I could definitely outrun it. My basic movement technique was already at the great success stage. If I couldn't fight, I'd just bolt. Part of me wished I had a high-level movement manual to make it even easier, but for now, I was just curious how much experience a level 2 monster would give me. I looked around. Not a single soul in sight. Did nobody spend the night outside the city? Were they really that timid? I had hoped to run into a traveler to ask for directions. If the city was close, I'd head home. Sleeping in a bed is always better than the dirt. If it was too far, I'd just find a safe spot to hide. If I got lucky, I might even harvest some more experience points during the night. That's when I saw it. High up in a massive tree nearby, I spotted the faint outline of a hollow. It was partially hidden by thick branches and leaves, but it looked promising. I hoped my eyes weren't playing tricks on me. A tree hole would be the perfect place to hunker down. Nighttime was when monsters were most active. Creatures like the tusk boars usually just lazed around during the day unless you provoked them, but they turned aggressive the moment the sun went down. I approached the tree. The trunk was at least 2 meters wide and towered 20 meters into the sky. The hole was right in the middle, about 10 meters up. Since I hadn't learned any fancy wall-climbing martial arts yet, I had to do it the old-fashioned way. Normally, climbing a trunk this smooth and thick without tools would be impossible. Luckily, there were small notches carved into the wood at regular intervals. Someone had been here before and put a lot of work into making this accessible. I started climbing. By the time I hit the 6-meter mark, I was feeling pretty impressed with whoever carved these grips. A few moments later, I pulled myself onto a thick branch and crawled into the hollow where the branch met the trunk. I looked out, but all I saw was an endless sea of green. I couldn't see Honghai City or even tell which direction it was in. I thought about climbing higher to get a better view, but I quickly killed that idea. It was too dangerous. I turned my attention to the tree hole. It wasn't huge, but it was plenty of space for one person. There was even a bed inside, a flat ledge naturally connected to the trunk. It looked ancient. I ran my hand over the surface, pulling back a finger coated in a thick layer of dust. I took the tusk boar pelts off my back and spread one over the wooden ledge. I sat down and grinned. I was a genius. Luckily, these pelts didn't smell, or this would have been a nightmare. I pulled up my status panel. Name, Guoxiao, Realm, 5th level Martial Apprentice, Stage 7. Cultivation, Northern Brightness Divine Art, Max level. Basic Physical Exercises, Entry, Martial Arts. Basic Combat, Small Success. Basic Sword Technique, Great Success. Basic Movement, Great Success. Drawing Sword Technique, Great Success. Experience Points, 40,965, gaining 7 points per minute. The points were piling up fast. Since this spot felt secure, I decided not to wait. I dumped all my saved experience into my cultivation realm. It was seamless, and I felt the energy surge through me, pushing me straight into the 8th stage of the 5th level. Immediately after the breakthrough, a wave of hunger hit me. I popped a blood-replenishing pill, and the hollow feeling in my stomach slowly faded. At this rate, the effects of my current pills would be gone by the time I hit the 9th stage. I needed more, but I was broke. If I had the cash, I'd head straight to the guild to stock up. I checked the math. I still needed 52,816 points for the next jump. I couldn't help but sigh. A few days ago, I was stuck at the 3rd stage. Now I was at the 8th. It felt like a dream. I stood at the edge of the tree hole, looking up at the sky. "Mom, Dad, can you see me?" I whispered. I wasn't sure if I was talking to my parents from my past life or this one. Maybe both. I'm actually making something of myself. The night sky was stunning. Without city lights, the stars seemed to swirl around me in a brilliant, colorful display. It was a view I never could have seen back on Earth. Suddenly, the silence broke. Oh, whoa. The sound of snapping branches and monster cries echoed through the woods. The forest had come alive. Using the moonlight, I peered down at the base of the tree. A bee-wolf was facing off against a tusked boar. A bee-wolf was only a level 1, stage 6 monster, way weaker than its cousin, the mad bee-wolf, but it was still a predator. The wolf was only 1 stage higher than the boar, but the fight wasn't even close. The wolf lunged, sinking its teeth into the boar's neck. The boar thrashed for a few seconds before going limp, letting out one final, angry squeal. The bee-wolf didn't waste a second. It started tearing into the carcass, clearly starving. It was so focused on its meal that it didn't even notice me watching from above. "There's my chance," I whispered. I slowly drew my bronze sword. I lined up my shot and took a breath. Then I jumped. A 10-meter drop was nothing for a 5th-level martial artist, let alone someone at the 8th stage. The bee-wolf felt the shift in the air. It looked up, meat still hanging from its jaws, but it was too late. My blade pierced straight through its skull before it could even flinch. It died with a look of pure satisfaction still on its face, never knowing what hit it. The wolf died with a look of pure confusion on its face. It hadn't felt a thing. I let out a soft breath, my heart hammering against my ribs. I had actually done it. I reached down to pull my bronze sword out of the bee-wolf's skull, but I froze. The forest wasn't silent anymore. Oh, whoa! The air filled with the sounds of snapping brush and high-pitched squeals. It was coming from every direction. I listened closely. Most of the cries were deep and guttural, tusked boars. A lot of them. Something felt wrong. The hair on the back of my neck stood up, and a voice in my head screamed at me to move. I didn't hesitate. As I jerked my sword free, I triggered the Northern Brightness Divine Art. Experience points plus 565. I looked at the 2 carcasses on the ground, feeling a pang of regret for leaving all that potential energy behind. But the sounds were getting closer. I scrambled back up the tree, digging my fingers into the grooves of the bark. I barely reached the high branches when a massive pack of tusked boars burst into the clearing. They gathered around the fallen boar, letting out mournful, angry cries that shook the leaves around me. I stayed perfectly still, hidden by the thick foliage. Even if they looked up, they couldn't climb this high. They stared at the dead bee-wolf with pure hatred. Its teeth marks were all over their fallen kin. They didn't even notice me watching from above. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, but it wasn't an injury. It was heartbreak. There were millions of potential experience points down there, and I was stuck in a tree. Suddenly, the clearing went quiet. I leaned out slightly, my breath hitching. The tusked boars weren't alone anymore. A pack of bee-wolves had emerged from the shadows. The 2 groups stared each other down, the tension thick enough to cut with a blade. It was a standoff. A total war between species. They didn't wait long. With a collective roar, the 2 packs collided. It was a bloodbath. The bee-wolves were higher level, but the tusk boars had the numbers. It was a borsy tactic, and it was working. I watched, mesmerized, my fear replaced by greed. Every time a beast fell, I saw a pile of gold coins and experience points. If I could just scavenge the leftovers when this was over, I'd be rich. Other predators in the forest heard the commotion and wisely steered clear. The sun began to peek over the horizon, casting long shadows through the trees. Down below, the sounds of slaughter finally faded. "Here we go," I whispered. I looked down, expecting a field of corpses. My jaw dropped. "Hey, don't take it all. Leave some for me." The survivors were retreating, but they weren't going empty-handed. Every single wolf and boar was dragging a carcass away, friend or foe, they didn't care. They were clearing the buffet. I waited until the last tail disappeared into the brush and the woods went silent. I dropped from the tree, landing heavily. I immediately scuffed the dirt with my boots to hide my footprints. I'd read enough novels to know that leaving tracks was a rookie mistake. I looked around the clearing and groaned. Those greedy bastards had taken every intact body. The jig was up. 2 men stepped out. The leader had a jagged scar running down his face, and his eyes immediately landed on my pile of pelts. A predatory grin spread across his lips. "Quite a haul you've got there, little brother," the scarred man said. "How about your big brother Dao Ba helps you carry that back?" I narrowed my eyes. "Tell the rest of your friends to come out too. I see them." Dao Ba chuckled and clapped his hands. "Sharp eyes, kid. Come on out, boys." 5 more men stepped out of the brush. When they saw the pile of high-grade pelts, their expressions turned to pure greed. One of them stepped forward, brandishing a blade. "Listen, kid. Leave everything valuable, drop your sword, and put your hands behind your head. Do it now, or things get ugly. We're the Tiger Mercenaries," another one sneered. "Be a good boy and follow orders." My stomach dropped. I knew that name. The Tiger Mercenaries were famous in Honghai City, but for all the wrong reasons. They had 3 martial masters and dozens of lower-level fighters. Inside the city, they acted like model citizens because of the Martial Arts Association and the inspectors. But out here in the wild, they were murderers and thieves. Rumor had it they had powerful backers who kept them out of jail. Dao Ba saw the look on my face and laughed. "Ah, so you've heard of us. Good. Leave the gear, and we'll let you live. We're in a good mood today." I knew he was lying. The Tiger Mercenaries never left witnesses. That was how they stayed out of trouble. "Everything?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "You want everything?" They grinned, thinking I was terrified. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The men burst out laughing at the same time. Dao Ba saw me trembling and started walking toward me, his guard completely down. He didn't think I was a threat at all. One look at my cheap, worn-out clothes told him everything he needed to know. In his eyes, I was just a poor kid. And if I was poor, there was no way my martial arts level was high. He probably figured I'd just gotten lucky and scavenged those high-grade pelts after some wild beasts fought each other during the night. I watched him get closer, my heart racing, but I didn't move. I wasn't just waiting, I was calculating. His lackeys were still a few paces back. If I moved too early, they might scatter and run. I couldn't let that happen. If even one of them escaped, the Tiger Mercenaries would hunt me down for the rest of my life. I had to pull the tiger's teeth and kill the cubs in one go. They kept coming, grinning like wolves. I lowered my head, letting my shoulders shake to sell the act. Then, I felt them close enough. It was time. I snapped my head up. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp glare. Dao Ba's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. He realized something was wrong, but he was too slow. Before he could even raise his hand, I lunged. My bronze sword blurred through the air. Drawing sword technique. The blade whistled as it sliced clean through his neck. Dao Ba didn't even have time to feel pain. His head slid off his shoulders, and his body slumped into the dirt. I didn't stop to watch him fall. I was already moving toward the others. The lackeys stood frozen, staring at their headless leader. It was like their brains had short-circuited. I cut down the second man before the first drop of blood even hit the grass. When the warm spray splashed across their faces, the remaining 3 finally snapped out of it. They didn't try to fight. They dropped to their knees, faces pale with terror, begging for their lives. "Which way to Honghai City?" I asked, my voice flat. They scrambled to point in the same direction, thinking their cooperation would buy them mercy. I nodded, memorizing the path. Then, I swung my sword 3 more times. I couldn't afford to be soft. Once the clearing was silent, I dragged the bodies into the thick brush. I had to be fast. It was daylight now, and anyone could be watching from the shadows. If someone saw me and realized I could absorb corpses, the whole world would come after me. I placed my hands on them and activated the system. Experience points plus 12,000. Experience points plus 7,000. I exhaled slowly. Daobao alone gave me over 10,000 points, which meant he was at least at the martial master realm. If I hadn't taken him by surprise, that fight would have been a nightmare. The others were weaker, likely between the 5th and 7th levels of the martial apprentice realm. My spiritual sense wasn't strong enough to gauge their levels beforehand, so I was glad I played it smart. An hour later, I was back in Honghai City, standing at a stall to sell the pelts. The owner, Old Chun, walked up and gave me a massive thumbs up. "Little brother, you've got real skill," he said, looking at the mountain of fur. "The quality is a bit rough, but the sheer quantity is incredible." "Just luck," I replied modestly. Old Chun shook his head, clearly impressed. "Luck is a part of strength, kid. Stay here while I tally this up." It took him and his assistant nearly 30 minutes to count everything. When he finally came back, he handed me a list. Tusked boar pelts for 114,000. Beewolf pelts for 152,000. Total is 266,000 yuan. Let's call it 270,000 even. My heart skipped a beat. 270,000. I hadn't realized the scavenged pile was worth that much. I pushed the list back toward him without looking at it. "I trust your word, Old Chun." There was no point in counting it myself. It was better to show him I trusted him and build a connection. A few seconds later, my phone vibrated in my pocket. The money had arrived. I thanked him and headed straight for the pill stalls. I was still a poor man in the world of martial arts, and I needed to spend this money wisely to grow stronger. I found the shopkeeper I had bought from before. He recognized me instantly, probably because I was the only person crazy enough to pay 10,000 yuan in cold cash. "What are you looking for today, kid?" he asked. "Do you have anything to replenish blood and chi?" He signaled for me to follow him into the actual shop behind the stall. "The stuff out there is for travelers. The real medicine is inside." I felt a surge of hope. Maybe I could finally afford the good stuff. But when I asked for a bottle of blood-increasing chi pills, the shopkeeper looked at me like I was joking. "A whole bottle?" He sighed, shaking his head. "Young man, you won't even find a full bottle of that in the Martial Arts Association here. Honghai is a small city. Anything high-grade has to be pre-ordered from the capital. Besides, a single bottle would cost you at least 2 million yuan. My stomach sank. 2 million. I was still broke after all. "If you're on a budget," he continued, pointing to a glass case, "I'd suggest these. Lower-grade blood replenishing pills, Dinkoan pills, or the 10-ingredient grade supplement. They aren't as powerful, but for your level, the lower-grade blood replenishing pill is the best bang for your buck." The price for the lower-grade blood replenishing pills was steep, 30,000 yuan per pill. The shopkeeper explained that for someone at the 5th level of the martial apprentice realm, a single pill could push me to the 6th level without any discomfort. Of course, the higher my level became, the more pills I'd need to see results. I could have saved money by eating demon beast meat instead, but I used demon beast for experience points, not dinner. Besides, with my terrible cooking skills, I'd rather just swallow a pill and save the time. I hesitated for a moment, looking at my bank balance, then looked up at the shopkeeper. I told him I'd take 9 pills. His eyes lit up instantly. Most people bought these one at a time, so a bulk order of 9 was rare. He looked me up and down, probably wondering if a kid like me actually had the cash. But as soon as the transfer went through, his skepticism vanished, replaced by a massive, fawning smile. He handed over the pills with a flourish. I didn't stick around to chat. I was broke again, and I'd asked all the questions I needed to. It was time to go home and break through to the 9th level. Back in my apartment, I sat on the sofa and stared at the small pills in my hand. They cost the same as the body tempering powder, and I wondered if they were worth it. I popped one into my mouth. The taste was strange, but it was a massive improvement over the bone-strengthening pills. At least these didn't taste like they were rotting. As the pill dissolved, a warm sensation spread through my chest. Within minutes, the medicinal power was fully absorbed. My body felt comfortable and satisfied, like I'd just finished a perfect meal. I couldn't resist. I took another one and pulled up my attribute panel to check my progress. Name: Washao. Realm: 5th level martial apprentice, 111,846/400. Cultivation, Northern Brightness Divine Art. Skills, Basic Gymnastics, Entry Level. Basic Combat, Small Success. Basic Sword Technique, Great Success. Basic Movement, Great Success. And Sword Drawing Technique, Great Success. Current Experience Points, 134,527. At the 8th level, I was gaining 8 experience points every minute automatically. I'd been so busy all day that I hadn't checked the total. I expected maybe 80 or 90,000, but seeing over 130,000 was a beautiful surprise. I thought back to the wind wolves and fang boars from the night before. Those beasts were practically saints for giving me this much progress. I shook the thought away and focused. It was time to level up. I poured my experience points into my realm, and that familiar, mysterious power flooded my veins. When the energy stopped surging, I was at the peak of the 8th level. A moment later, I felt the internal barrier shatter. I had officially reached the 9th level of the martial apprentice realm. Immediately, a wave of intense hunger hit me. I reached into my bag, grabbed 2 more blood-replenishing pills, and swallowed them whole. The hunger vanished instantly. These pills were effective, but I'd already burned through 4 of them. That was 120,000 yuan gone in the blink of an eye. The old saying was true: literature is for the poor, but martial arts is for the rich. Meanwhile, across the city, Yun Shui was moping around her house. Her brother, Yun Shan, noticed her slumped on the couch. Their father, Yun Shan Sr., asked what was wrong, and Yun Shan explained that she'd been humbled by a classmate. Her father actually looked relieved. His daughter had always been too arrogant, thinking no one besides the elite heirs of the big families was worth her time. Yun Shui sighed and told them about the trip to the outskirts. She mentioned killing a fanged boar, though she left out the part where she had to exhaust the beast to death because it was too embarrassing. Her mother hovered over her, checking for injuries, but her father wanted to know why she felt so defeated if she'd actually managed to kill. Yun Shan let the secret out. He told their father that on the way back, they ran into a classmate of hers. With just 2 casual arrows, that boy had dropped 2 fanged boars like it was nothing. Their father laughed, telling Chioi that once she mastered her power at the 8th level, she could do the same. But then Yun Shan dropped the real bombshell. The boy claimed to be only at the 7th level, though he suspected the kid was hiding his true strength and was likely an 8th level like her. Chioi's father nodded, impressed that a student knew how to hide his trump cards. But Chioi was still frustrated. She felt weak, and more than that, she couldn't stop thinking about the way Guo Xiao had looked at her. She was a beautiful girl, but he had looked at her like she was just some random person on the street. It stung. She begged her father to teach her advanced martial arts, but he refused, telling her to focus on her exams and master her small success in basic sword technique first. While they talked, in a heavily guarded study across town, a burly man stared at his butler in disbelief. This was the head of the Lin family. He couldn't wrap his head around the report he'd just received. That kid, Guo Xiao, had somehow reached the 7th level right under their noses. Given the boy's miserable living conditions, he shouldn't have been able to get past the 5th level. The butler confirmed the news, his face pale. The intelligence was solid. Guo Xiao was no longer the weakling they thought he was. My butler stood before me, his face grim. He wasn't the type to exaggerate. If he said his sources were solid, then the news was true. I sat in silence, processing the reality that Guo Xiao had reached the 7th level right under my nose. Based on his miserable life, he shouldn't have been able to cross the 5th level. If anything, he was likely hiding even more strength. Those thugs are useless, I growled, slamming my hand onto the desk. They can't even keep tabs on one kid. The boy is deeper than he looks, sir, the butler replied, sensing my fury. He leaned in and made a sharp, cutting motion across his throat. Shall I handle it? Permanently. I tapped my fingers on the desk, thinking. The Tiger Squad and Yun Shan went to the desolate city. They took most of our elite combat power with them. Is there anyone left? I'll check, sir, he said. If you find someone, I added, don't kill him yet. Just break his arms and legs and bring him to me. I wasn't sure why I wanted him alive, but I wasn't ready to let him die just yet. The butler nodded and left the room. I leaned back, muttering to myself. Scar was a complete waste of space, getting ambushed by a mere martial apprentice. Meanwhile, in a dark corner of the city, a man known as Fourth Brother sat with his crew. One of his lackeys looked at him nervously. "Fourth Brother, should we report this to the boss?" "How?" Fourth Brother snapped. "They're in the desolate city. We can't reach them." Suddenly, his phone started ringing to a pop song. He signaled for silence and answered. "Steward Sue, what brings you to my door today?" "Little Four." The butler's voice came through the line. "How many people do you have at the martial artist realm right now?" "Two," Fourth Brother answered. "The strongest is at the 5th stage." "That's enough. I'm sending you a photo. If you can, break all 4 of his limbs and bring him in." "Consider it done." Fourth Brother hung up and looked at the young lackey beside him. He'd put the call on speaker, so the kid had heard everything. A moment later, the phone buzzed with the photo. Fourth Brother held it up. "Take a look. You're a martial artist now, so it's time you start handling real business." The lackey, Xiao-san, squinted at the screen. "Wait, I know this guy." "You do?" "Fourth Brother, this is the kid who killed Scar and the others." Fourth Brother's eyes widened. "Are you sure? He looks younger in this photo." "I'm positive. I just didn't recognize him at first glance because he's dressed differently." Fourth Brother chuckled darkly. "What a coincidence. How many people did this kid piss off? He even offended Steward Sue." "Who exactly is Steward Sue?" Xiao-san asked. Fourth Brother shook his head. "To be honest, I don't know. Nobody in the mercenary group knows his true identity. But listen to me, Xiao-san, it doesn't matter how much noise we make. As long as there's no direct evidence linking us to the crime, Steward Sue can protect us from anything." Xiao-san looked stunned. If a mere butler had that much power, the master behind him had to be godlike. "Tell the boys to keep their eyes peeled," Fourth Brother ordered. "We move together. I don't want any surprises." While they were plotting my downfall, I was miles away, deep in the forest outside the city. I had just reached the 9th level of the martial apprentice realm, and I couldn't wait to test my strength. The night belonged to the beasts. Most humans stayed behind the safety lines, but I was different. I moved through the trees, absorbing experience points like a vacuum. Every time a beast lunged at me, my sword found its mark. Experience plus 7,000. Experience plus 6,500. I sliced through a group of small green snakes and scoffed. Whoever named them had a sick sense of humor. These things were 6 meters long and as thick as a tree trunk. Ever since the spiritual chi recovery, everything had evolved. Even ants were the size of dogs now, though they were still the weakest tier. I glanced at my status panel. Name, Wishao. Realm, 9th level martial apprentice, 1/100th, 000. Cultivation, Northern Brightness Divine Art, max level. Skills, Basic Sword Technique, great success. Basic Movement, great success. Sword Drawing, great success. Experience points, 124,111. My passive cultivation was giving me 9 points every minute. I had enough experience to break through to the martial artist realm right now, but I didn't have a safe place to meditate. I was outside the south gate, which was much more dangerous than the north. I'd already killed several beasts just getting this far. Crack, I froze. I looked around, scanning the shadows, but saw nothing. I figured I had just stepped on a dry branch. I didn't notice the tiny chip that had formed on the edge of my bronze sword. I sheathed it, gathered the furs from my kills, and kept moving. The sounds of hissing and croaking grew louder. I dropped my loot and climbed a thick tree to get a better vantage point. When I reached the top and looked through the leaves, I nearly cursed out loud. About 50 meters away, in a clearing, a massive swarm of small green snakes was facing off against a group of giant, toad-like creatures. It looked like a total war was about to break out, just like the wolves and boars from the night before. There had to be at least 100 of them. Most people would be terrified to stumble onto a battlefield like this. But as I watched them, a grin spread across my face. To me, this wasn't a danger, it was a gold mine. I didn't feel any fear. Instead, I was buzzing with excitement. To most, a battlefield like this was a nightmare, but to me, it was a gold mine. It meant my experience points were about to skyrocket. "Come on," I whispered, watching from the branch. "Start fighting already. Why are you just staring at each other?" I cheered them on from my perch, feeling like a spectator at a bloody arena. I wasn't in a hurry to climb down yet. I'd worked hard to get up here, and the view was perfect. If this tree were just a little thicker, I would have considered breaking through to the martial artist realm right then and there. The massacre lasted through the night. As the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, the chaos finally wound down. Only about 10 creatures were left standing, exhausted and wounded. It was time. I had to move fast before the sun came up and the actual martial artists started arriving to claim the area. The thought of all those experience points cleared the sleepiness right out of my head. I leaped from the tree, landing heavily and leaving 2 deep footprints in the dirt. Usually, I'd take the time to cover my tracks, but I was too impatient now. I sprinted toward the battlefield. Before the survivors even realized I was there, my blade flashed. One of the green snakes went limp instantly. Asterisk croak. Hiss. Asterisk the remaining beasts froze. Their internal war ended the second a human appeared. They might have been killing each other a second ago, but now, they were united by a common hatred. They charged at me as one. It didn't matter. I was at a higher realm than any of them, and they had spent the whole night fighting. They were at less than 30% of their peak strength. Even if there had been twice as many, they were just a disorganized mob to me. I moved through them like a whirlwind, my sword cutting through scales and flesh until the last one fell. Ping! A sharp, metallic snap echoed through the clearing. I looked down at my hand. My bronze sword, which had already been chipped, finally gave out. It snapped clean in two, as if hit by an invisible force. Cheap quality, I muttered, shaking my head. If the salesgirl who sold me this weapon heard me, she probably would have tried to kill me herself. These bronze swords were meant for beginners to practice forms, not for slaughtering dozens of first-level beasts. Their hides and bones grew tougher as they leveled up, and the fact that this blade had lasted this long was a testament to the blacksmith's skill. I'd actually gotten more than my money's worth, but all I could think about was the $3,000 I'd just watched snap in half. I sighed and shoved the broken hilt back into its sheath. I didn't have time to mourn a piece of metal. I got to work absorbing the experience points before the world woke up. By the time I made it back into the city, I couldn't stop grinning. People on the street stared as I walked by, lugging a massive roll of furs and hides on my back. I looked like a walking mountain of loot. Most of them watched me with pure envy. Even if the quality of the furs was poor, a haul that size was worth a fortune to an average person. Nobody tried to rob me, though. The city had strict laws, and anyone caught fighting would be locked away for years. Of course, outside the city gates, it would have been a different story. I noticed a few martial artists in the crowd looking at me with greedy eyes, but I didn't care. I was too happy. My experience points had reached a staggering 580,000. I couldn't hide the joy on my face if I tried. To the onlookers, I just looked like a kid who knew he was about to get rich. Brother Guashao? Guashao. Someone was calling my name. I was so deep in my own head, surrounded by the noise of the morning market, that I almost missed it. I turned around and saw a familiar face. Boss Chun, what are you doing here? Chunwei saw my confused look and laughed. I sent people to the North Gate Market to collect materials, but my actual business is right around the corner. He pointed down the street with a look of immense pride. Look, right there. I followed his finger. A large shop sat on the corner, Shinji Apparel. It had a classic, traditional look, guarded by 2 imposing stone lions at the entrance. It looked peaceful, professional, and very expensive. Old Shun, you've got some serious skill, I said, impressed. You didn't get a shop in a location like this without some serious backing. I'm just a minority shareholder, he said, waving it off, though he still looked pleased. The big boss doesn't like managing things. Anyway, come inside. Sit for a bit. And maybe. He glanced at the massive roll of fur on my back. I knew exactly what he wanted. I laughed. Talk about perfect timing. I was just looking for a place to sell these. That's great to hear. I'll make sure you get a price that makes you happy. Come on, let's get inside. It's too cold to stand out here. Chunwei's face lit up. He led me inside and immediately waved over an employee. Xiao Wang, take these and tally them up. Give him the highest possible rate. Yes, boss, the young man said. He turned to me with a respectful bow. Sir, if you please. I handed over the heavy bundle. Thanks for the help. No trouble at all. Please wait a moment. He carried the furs into a side room used for appraisals. Brother Guoxiao, Chunwei said, gesturing to the racks of clothing and gear surrounding us. While we wait, see if there's anything you need. Me? I don't think I need much, I replied. Don't be like that, Chen said, walking over to a display. Once you have money, you need to dress the part. Look at this armor. He pulled down a set of light plating. It looks heavy, but thanks to a special process, it's barely heavier than what you're wearing right now. I took it from him and weighed it in my hands. He was right. It was surprisingly light. I looked at it with newfound curiosity, wondering how they even manufactured something like this. Chunwei smiled, seeing my interest. The best part isn't the weight, he whispered. It's what it can stop. This armor is special, Chunwei continued, his voice full of pride. Any demonic beast below level 2 won't be able to leave a scratch on you. I raised an eyebrow. That impressive? Absolutely. Frontline fighters and mercenary squads wear this exact style to soak up damage. If you don't like the look, I have others. We have styles modeled after the Qin, Shang, and Han dynasties. And if none of those work, we even offer private custom tailoring. Boss Qin was a smooth talker. He was making a very convincing case that I needed an upgrade. I looked down at my worn-out clothes. Do you have anything in the style I'm wearing now? We do, he nodded quickly. We carry 3 grades, high, medium, and low. What are you looking for? What's the difference? I asked. High grade uses premium furs. It can negate about 50% of the damage from a level 2 beast. Mid grade is around 30%, and low grade is 10. I felt my heart skip a beat. Absorbing half the impact from a level 2 beast was incredible. That could be the difference between a broken rib and a minor bruise. Is it expensive? I asked, already bracing my wallet. If the price was insane, I'd have to settle for the mid-grade. Not at all, Chen said. Since it's not a full-plate armor set, even the high-grade version is only 50,000 yuan. I didn't hesitate. Fine, give me 2 sets. We spent the rest of the morning getting me fitted. By the time I walked out of Chen's clothing, the sun was high in the sky. I was wearing one of the new outfits, and I had to admit, the quality was night and day. It was comfortable, flexible, and felt sturdy. It was money well spent. I didn't head home yet. I had one more stop, the weapon shop. My 3,000 yuan bronze sword had shattered in my last fight. Going into the exams without a weapon would be suicide. Oh, it's you again, a girl in a staff uniform said as I walked in. What are you looking for this time? She didn't remember me because of my looks. She remembered me because of how much I had winced and groaned when I paid for that cheap bronze sword last time. I must have looked incredibly pathetic. I remember you had a 90-chain Longquan sword, I said. Is it still here? The last 90 chains sold this morning, she said, checking her records. She paused, looking at me more closely. We don't have any 90 chains left, but we do have a 101-chain Longquan sword. It's much more expensive, though. 40,000 yuan. The 90 chain was only 20,000. My eyes widened. That much of a jump? Yes, sir, she explained. Once a weapon hits 100 chains, it's classified as a sharp tool. The quality is on a completely different level from ordinary tools. I listened intently. I knew the basics, but she was filling in the gaps. Anything under 100 chains was an ordinary tool. From 100 to 499, they were sharp tools. Anything that broke the 500 mark was a treasure tool. What's above treasure tools? I asked. She didn't answer, probably figuring a high school student didn't need to know. Would you like to see the 101 chain sword? Lead the way, I said. As I followed her, I thought about the tiers. Ordinary, sharp, treasure. Based on the novels I used to read, the next ones were probably famous tools and god tools. Sir. Here it is. I snapped out of my thoughts. Sorry, I was distracted. This is the 101 chain blade. Please, feel the weight. I gripped the hilt and slowly drew the sword. The patterns on the steel were unique, flowing like natural art across the blade. The balance was perfect. It felt nothing like that clunky bronze piece I'd used before. 40,000. I asked. Correct, sir. I'll take it. Wow. A shrill, mocking voice cut through the air behind me. Isn't this my classmate Guoxiao? Since when did you learn to talk so big? I frowned. I knew that voice. I turned around and saw Yang Wei. Yang Wei, I muttered. What? You don't recognize your big brother after a few days? He sneered. Yang Wei was one of those people you just can't forget, no matter how hard you try. His talent was mediocre at best, but his family had pumped him full of resources to get him to the 5th level of the martial apprentice realm. In a prestigious school like Honghai 7th, that was barely a passing grade. He spent most of his time acting like a servant for a guy named Lin Kai. He was the definition of a small-time bully. Back when everyone thought I was stuck at the 3rd level, he never missed a chance to mock me. He was easily one of the people I hated most. Yang Wei ignored me and turned to the salesgirl, his eyes scanning her up and down. Hey beautiful, don't waste your breath on this loser. He's a pauper. He doesn't have 40,000 yuan. I'll take the sword instead. Are you free tonight? He struck a cool pose and winked. The girl's eyes flashed with a split second of pure disgust. She clearly wasn't interested in his act. I'm sorry, she said coldly. This gentleman has already claimed the weapon. If he can't pay, then you're welcome to it. Yang Wei laughed, unfazed by the rejection. Beautiful, look at him. His whole outfit probably cost less than 100 yuan. You really think he has the cash? He didn't realize that while I was wearing a similar style to my old clothes, the quality was obvious to anyone who knew gear. The girl, however, wasn't blind. She knew my new outfit was made of high-grade beast fur. It cost at least 60,000 yuan on its own. Yang Wei, I said, my voice heavy. What? He snapped. Did you forget to take your medicine today? He blinked, confused by the shift in my tone. I took it. What? Then why are you acting like a lunatic? Whether I can afford it or not is none of your business. The salesgirl let out a muffled snort, trying to hide her laughter. Yang Wei's face turned bright red as he realized I'd just called him crazy to his face. You. He sputtered, unable to find a comeback. Fine. I'll stay right here and watch you fail to pay. I want to see the look on your face when the card declines. He marched over to the counter to wait for the show. What a moron, I muttered. Your classmate really isn't the brightest, the girl agreed, nodding. I'm Nangong Jing, by the way. I'm a freshman at the Capital 5 Weapons Academy. Guoxiao? Honghai 7th, Class 5, I replied. The Capital 5 has a specific weapons academy. They have many, she explained. Alchemy, weapons, research, martial arts. They all teach different disciplines. You'll see for yourself once you get in. She didn't elaborate further. Let's settle the bill. We walked to the counter. Yang Wei was hovering nearby, eyes glued to the terminal. The shopkeeper looked at the sword and barked out the price. 101 chain Longquan sword. 40,000 yuan. Bank transfer, I said calmly. I tapped my phone. The machine beeped. Transaction successful. Yang Wei stood there, frozen. His jaw practically hit the floor. Everyone at school knew Guoxiao was dirt poor. In his mind, I shouldn't have been able to afford a 40 yuan meal, let alone a 40,000 yuan sword. He looked like he'd just seen a ghost. I turned to Yang Wei, who was still standing there like a statue. I couldn't resist a little parting shot. So, Yang Wei, I said, my voice dripping with feigned curiosity. Do I still look like I'm broke to you? He didn't answer. He just stood there in a stunned silence, his face turning a deep, bruised shade of purple. He had come here to watch me get humiliated, but instead, he'd been slapped in the face by reality. Without a single word, he turned on his heel and stormed out of the shop, his ego clearly bruised beyond repair. I turned back to the counter. By the way, boss, do you buy scrap metal? I pulled out the shattered remnants of my old bronze sword and set them on the glass. The shopkeeper didn't even look up. We don't take trash, he grunted. You just spent 40,000. Why do you care about a broken piece of bronze? It's not worth the cost to remelt it. It's garbage. I frowned. Garbage? It's still a sword. Well, half of one. Nangong Jing watched me with a look of pure disbelief, as if she couldn't reconcile my 40,000 yuan purchase with my current stinginess. If that Longquan sword breaks, you might get some scrap value for it, she said, a hint of a smile tugging at her lips. But that bronze thing? Just toss it. The boss nodded without looking up. Listen to her. It's junk, I sighed, feeling a bit disappointed. I'd carried the broken pieces all this way hoping to claw back a few bucks. I tossed the shards into a nearby trash can and walked out of the store empty-handed, save for my new weapon. Once I was gone, the shopkeeper finally raised his head. His bored expression was gone, replaced by a sharp, calculating intensity. Miss, he said to Nangong Jing. That boy, he feels dangerous. If you don't know his background, I suggest you keep your distance. Nangong Jing blinked in surprise. Dangerous? Old MO, you're overthinking it. He's at the 9th level of the apprentice realm at best. I'm already a 3rd level martial artist. If we actually fought, I wouldn't be afraid of him. My instincts tell me otherwise, Old MO insisted. He used to be a powerful expert in the martial forest realm before a severe injury dropped his cultivation. Even with his powers faded, his intuition was sharper than most. I can't explain it, but when he gripped that sword, I felt a chill I haven't felt in years. Nangong Jing went quiet. She respected Old Mo's history. If a man who almost reached the martial king realm said someone was dangerous, you listened. I understand, she said softly. But we're in the city. How much trouble can a high schooler really be? She had no idea that Old MO was currently reeling from the encounter. Even at his lowered level, he shouldn't have felt intimidated by a student. Yet, for a split second, his heart had tightened with genuine fear. Meanwhile, I was back at my apartment, completely unaware of the dangerous reputation I was building. I pulled up my system interface. My experience points had reached a staggering 591,392. Thanks to the Northern Brightness Divine Art, I was gaining 9 points every single minute. It felt like I'd hit the lottery. It was time to level up. I focused on my cultivation, and the numbers began to plummet. They didn't stop until they hit 491,393. Exactly 99,999 points had been consumed. Suddenly, a surge of mysterious energy erupted within my chest. It was slow at first, then steady, pushing my strength through the 9th level. Early, middle, late, and finally, peak. 2 hours passed. I thought the process was over, but then my mind went completely blank. My consciousness felt like it was floating out of my body. Where am I? I found myself in a strange, ethereal space. Tiny, shimmering white dots of light were floating everywhere. Is this spiritual chi? I realized that humans probably breathe this in every day to survive, but we're usually blind to it. In this meditative state, I could see every single grain of energy. There was just one problem. I didn't have a manual for absorbing chi. The basic gymnastics I learned at school were only for tempering the physical body, not for drawing in energy. Hey, little lights, I whispered in my mind. Come to Big Brother. Come on, babies, over here. I tried every cheesy line I could think of, but the lights just drifted aimlessly. I felt like a total creep talking to the air. Just as I was about to give up, one tiny speck of light seemed moved by my persistence. It drifted toward me and merged into my skin. The sensation was incredible. It felt better than any high-grade pill I'd ever taken. Suddenly, that first speck acted like a guide. The rest of the spiritual chi began to swarm toward me, pouring into my pores. I started shaking on the sofa. It was pure ecstasy. Every cell in my body was screaming with joy, devouring the energy like a man dying of thirst. I felt like I was flying through the clouds. As the chi saturated my muscles, my skin began to itch. Black, oily impurities started oozing out of my pores, accompanied by a horrific stench, but I was too deep in the trance to notice. I stayed in that state until the next morning. When I finally opened my eyes, I was officially a first-level martial artist. I let out a long, satisfied groan and stretched. My bones popped and cracked like fireworks. Man, that feels good, I muttered. Then, the smell hit me. Wait, is the neighbor eating rotten trash? I looked down at my arms. They were covered in a thick, black, sticky sludge. I lifted my sleeve to my nose and immediately started gagging. Oh God, is this for me? The joy of breaking through vanished instantly. I scrambled into the bathroom, tearing off my clothes and scrubbing my skin until it was raw. 2 hours later, I emerged, holding my 5,000 yuan outfit in a plastic bag at arm's length. It smelled like a chemical spill in a sewer. Even though I'd paid a fortune for those clothes, I couldn't bring myself to wash them. They were a biohazard now. Why didn't the teacher warn me about this? I grumbled, tossing the expensive trash into the bin outside. Breaking through to the martial artist realm is disgusting. I couldn't believe it. I'd spent 50,000 yuan on those clothes, wore them for exactly 1 day, and now they were trash. If I had known breaking through was this messy, I would have locked myself in the bathroom first. My teacher, Su Qing, probably had no idea this would happen. She couldn't be blamed. In the last 100 years, no high school student had ever reached the martial artist realm before graduation. The record was the peak of the 9th-level apprentice. Most students didn't hit this stage until they were well into their time at the Big Five universities. Because of that, teachers didn't even bother teaching us about the cleansing process. They saved that lecture for college. I walked back into my living room, and the stench hit me like a physical wall. It was nauseating. My sofa was covered in the black sludge I'd leaked overnight. I spent the next hour scrubbing the fabric, gagging the entire time. If the stains hadn't come out, I would have had to throw the whole sofa away. By the time I finished, I was exhausted. Being a housewife must be the hardest job on earth. I only cleaned one piece of furniture, and I felt like I'd been fighting monsters in the wild for 3 days straight. I slumped down on the clean side of the sofa and pulled out my last 4 low-grade blood-replenishing pills. I swallowed them all at once. Usually, that would make me feel stuffed with energy, but this time, nothing. It wasn't enough. Now that I was a martial artist, my body needed way more fuel. Thankfully, my Northern Brightness divine art was still pulling chi from the air, but it was clear that being a martial artist was going to be an expensive hobby. I checked my bank balance. I had about 300,000 yuan left after buying my gear. It sounded like a lot, but in this world, that wouldn't even buy one high-quality pill. I sighed, trying not to stress. At least I had my system. If I didn't have the Northern Brightness divine art, I'd be broke and starving just trying to keep up with my cultivation. I called up my status panel to see where I stood. Name asterisk Guashao. Realm asterisk first level martial artist. Cannot upgrade. Cultivation asterisk Northern Brightness divine art. Max level. Martial arts asterisk basic sword technique. Great success. Basic movement. Great success. Drawing sword tech. Great success. Experience points asterisk 493,673. I froze. I rubbed my eyes and looked again. Right next to my realm, it clearly said, cannot upgrade. What is this? I muttered. Is it because I don't have a martial artist level cultivation technique? That had to be it. In the open market, you couldn't even buy a basic tier technique for my current level. They were strictly controlled. To get one, you either had to sign a soul-binding contract with a massive corporation, spend a year doing dangerous missions for the Martial Artist Guild, or get into the Big Five. Even the worst of the top universities gave their students a free manual upon entry. Actually, maybe this was a blessing in disguise. If I leveled up too fast, people would get suspicious. How would I explain reaching the 2nd or 3rd level of a martial artist without a manual? I was a poor orphan with nothing but a house. I couldn't exactly claim I found a legendary scroll on the sidewalk. Since I couldn't level up my realm, I decided to dump my points into my skills. I had nearly 500,000 experience points, and I wasn't about to let them sit there. I looked at my basic sword technique. It was time to push it to perfection. I was careful, though. I didn't dare upgrade everything at once. The mental strain of going from small success to great success had been brutal. I tapped the button for the sword technique and braced myself. My brain suddenly felt like it was being stuffed with hot lead. Information flooded my mind, expanding until I thought my skull might actually crack open. I gritted my teeth, holding onto consciousness by a thread. Finally, the pressure faded, and my mind drifted into that familiar, mysterious void. But this time, it was different. Usually, the figure practicing the sword in this space was blurry, like a low-resolution video or a censored image. Now, the mosaic was disappearing. I watched, mesmerized. Thousands of blurry figures were practicing all around me, but they began to merge. They spun faster and faster, shrinking in number until only one figure remained standing directly in front of me. I gasped. The figure was me. He wore the same clothes. He had the same face. He looked sharp, focused, and incredibly cool. I'd always suspected the figure in the fog was me, but seeing it clearly was something else. I didn't even feel shocked. I just felt a strange sense of pride. I stepped forward to get a better look, but the other me began to fade away. As he vanished, a sword remained, stabbed firmly into the ground. I recognized it instantly. It was the Longquan sword I'd just bought. I didn't understand why I was still in this space, but I walked over and gripped the hilt. The moment my fingers closed around the cold metal, a feeling I couldn't describe washed over me. It was as if the sword wasn't a tool anymore. It was an extension of my own arm. The sword suddenly felt alive in my hand. Before I could even process what was happening, the world around me flickered like a glitching screen. My consciousness was yanked out of that mysterious space and slammed back into my own body. I opened my eyes to the familiar sight of my messy apartment. I was back. What the hell was that? I muttered, my heart racing. I couldn't shake the sensation from the void. When I gripped that Longquan sword, it didn't feel like cold steel. It felt like it had a pulse, a heartbeat, like it was trying to whisper a secret directly into my soul. My eyes darted to the side, landing on the physical sword I'd bought. Without thinking, I reached out and grabbed it. The blade was 105 centimeters long, 0.9 centimeters thick, and weighed exactly 2.3 kilograms. The moment my fingers wrapped around the hilt, a flood of information surged into my brain. I knew every detail of this weapon, its balance point, its structural integrity, everything. I was stunned. I knew this sword was made of 101-layer Damascus steel because the shopkeeper told me, but I'd never measured the width or the weight. Now, it was like the sword had no secrets from me. It didn't even feel like I was holding an object. It felt like an extension of my own arm. If I had the thought to strike, the sword was already there. Is the perfection stage of basic sword technique really this powerful? I wondered. I didn't realize it yet, but most martial artists only reach perfection after years of brutal combat and deep philosophical realization. They have to see the world and bleed for their craft to truly understand the soul of the blade. But because of my system panel, I'd bypassed all those decades of struggle. I had achieved in my teens what most people couldn't finish in a lifetime. If hard work alone was enough, the world wouldn't be plagued by demonic beasts. Am I actually a genius? I whispered. I couldn't find any other explanation. I must have been a hidden sword-fighting prodigy all along, and I just never knew it. I pulled up my system panel to check my progress. Basic sword technique. Perfection 0/0. I frowned. I'd been hoping to dump more experience points into it to reach the next level, but the progress bar was gone. There had to be a realm above perfection, right? Why wasn't there a requirement? Maybe there are conditions I don't know about yet. I sighed. I guess I'm just not educated enough. I realized then how much I lacked in actual martial theory. I was strong, but I was ignorant. Forget it, I muttered, rubbing my eyes. Sleep first. I'll break through with my movement technique when I wake up. The moment my head hit the sofa, I was out. Processing all that information from the perfection stage and spending so much time in the mysterious void had pushed my mental state to the absolute limit. The only reason I'd stayed awake this long was the sheer adrenaline of the breakthrough. Now that the excitement was fading, the exhaustion hit me like a freight train. Outside, in a small restaurant not far from my apartment, a group of thugs sat huddled around a table. Their eyes were glued to my front door. They looked miserable, tired, and incredibly annoyed. Fourth brother, one of them whispered, his voice cracking with impatience. It's been almost 10 days. That kid hasn't stepped a foot outside. Can't we just break in? The man called fourth brother glared at him, then jerked his chin toward the street. A group of police officers in crisp uniforms was patrolling the sidewalk. You want to spend the next few years in a cell? Fourth brother snapped. Look at the heat out there. As long as we stay patient, he'll have to leave eventually. Once he's out of the city, he's ours. I'm gonna wreck him. The younger thug, Xiao San, hissed. My eyes are literally going blurry from staring at that door for 10 days. These guys were from the Tiger mercenary group. They'd been camping out since they saw me come home, waiting for a chance to strike. Usually, the city guard only got strict a week before the Big 5 exams, and even then, they only worked day shifts. But this year was different. The patrols were running 24 hours a day. Down the street, a young officer sighed, looking exhausted. Captain, those guys in the restaurant have been staring at that apartment for days. Should we move them? Ignore them, the captain replied, leaning against a lamp post. As long as they don't start a fight, they can stare until they turn into stone. Just stay sharp. Only a few more days until the exams. Then we can all sleep. Captain, why is the Bureau so crazy this year? 24-hour patrols. The captain leaned in, lowering his voice. You know what year this is? It's the 500th anniversary of the era of martial arts. Word is, the top brass from the Big Five, including the schools from the imperial capital and the first military academy, are coming to Honghai City to scout the exams personally. The young officers gasped. Are you serious? My cousin's brother-in-law works security for the Ministry of Education. The captain bragged, puffing out his chest. It's legit. The city wants to look perfect for the scouts. So, suck it up for another 3 hours. When the shift ends, I'm buying everyone dinner at the food stalls. Long live the captain, the young guys cheered. Inside the apartment, I had no idea about the scouts or the thugs waiting for me. 10 days passed in what felt like a blink. I was so deep in my cultivation that I forgot to eat. Every time I felt the pangs of hunger while training in the void, I'd snap back to reality just long enough to swallow a fasting pill. I'd started with 21 pills, but I was being stingy. I only had 7 left in my bag. I was pushing myself to the absolute limit. When I finally opened my eyes, a flash of excitement flickered through my mind. I had done it. My basic combat technique had reached the perfection realm. Just a day ago, I had finished maxing out every other skill I owned. At first, I wasn't going to bother with hand-to-hand combat. But then I thought about it. What if my sword shattered in the middle of a fight? I couldn't just stand there. I needed my fists to be just as deadly as my blade. I checked my status. Name, Guashao. Realm, first tier martial artist, maxed. Cultivation art, Northern Brightness Divine Art, level max. Martial arts. Basic gymnastics, level 18 entry level, 66.4 billion/infinity. Basic combat, perfection 0/0. Basic sword, perfection 0/0. Basic movement, perfection 0/0. Sword drawing art, perfection 0/0. Current experience, 260,806. As a first-tier martial artist, I was gaining 10 experience points every single minute. It felt good. I was at my absolute peak. Except for the basic gymnastics, which was basically useless now that I'd reached the martial artist realm. There was nowhere left to put my points. I wasn't a perfectionist. I didn't feel the need to max out a dead-end skill just for the sake of it. I basked in the feeling for a moment before collapsing back onto my bed. Training these techniques was physically and mentally draining. My mind felt heavy, like it was stuffed with too much information, but the fatigue wasn't as bad as before. It seemed my mental strength had grown. Processing the combat techniques hadn't knocked me out nearly as hard as the sword arts did. Suddenly, my phone buzzed in my bag. I pulled it out and saw a name on the screen, Su Qing. I stared at it. Was she calling the wrong person? I answered anyway. Hello? Teacher Su. Guashao. Her voice came through, sharp and urgent. Do you remember what day it is next Monday? I glanced at the calendar on the wall. Yeah, Father's Day. I knew it, she snapped. Guashao, your priorities are all wrong. How could you forget the martial arts entrance exam? It's the most important day of your life. I winced. I had been so buried in training that the date had completely slipped my mind. Sorry, Teacher Su. I just woke up. My brain is still a bit foggy. I could practically hear her forehead vein throbbing through the phone. She sighed, her tone softening slightly. Look, I know your cultivation level is a bit low, but don't give up hope yet. Word is the passing scores might be lower this year. If you ace the theory and the technique portions, you still have a shot at the Big Five. I stayed silent. What was I supposed to say? Actually, teacher, I've already broken through to the martial artist realm. She'd never believe me. She'd think I was just bragging to save face. Guashao, are you listening? She asked, her voice rising again. I'm here, teacher. Good. Don't waste these last few days. Focus on your theory books. Try to get a perfect score there. I will, I promised. I was about to hang up when she yelled. Wait, don't hang up yet. Monday morning, 8 a.m. sharp. Multimedia building for the theory exam. Then 11 a.m. at the track for the physical assessment. Do not be late. Understood, I said. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, feeling a bit dazed. I wanted to ask about my student ID or other logistics, but she was gone. She was clearly stressed. I tossed the phone back into my bag and fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. Meanwhile, back at Honghai 7th High School, Su-Ching put her phone down and let out a long, heavy sigh. "What's wrong, Teacher Su?" a colleague asked from the next desk. "It's Guo Xiao," Su-Ching muttered. "I'm just worried about his future." The office went quiet. Even though our school was for the wealthy elite, there were always a few students from poor backgrounds who had scraped their way in, hoping for a miracle. Guo Xiao was the worst off among them. "I have a student named Lin Run," another teacher sighed. "Still stuck at the 4th level of the martial apprentice realm. He probably won't even hit the 5th level before the exam." "Mine too." The room filled with the sound of frustrated teachers. In this era, the martial arts exam was the only way for a kid from the streets to change their life. It was the simplest path to success, but simple didn't mean easy. It was a brutal, unforgiving climb. The next morning, I woke up and stretched. My joints popped like firecrackers. I checked the time. I had only slept for one night. My mental recovery was definitely getting faster. Usually, after a major breakthrough, I was out for at least 2 days. I had 5 days left. I couldn't just sit around. I needed more experience points. If I could stockpile enough, I could instantly level up whatever new techniques I learned once I got into a university. I packed my gear and headed for the city gates. Outside, in a shadowed alley near my apartment, a man named Xiao Si was sweating as he spoke into his phone. "Butler Su, I'm sorry. The kid hasn't left his apartment in 10 days. We can't just break in. With the exams coming up, the police patrols are everywhere. If we kick down a door now, we're finished." "He's just a martial apprentice," the voice on the other end said coldly. "Find a way." Butler Su went silent on the other end of the line. As the mayor's right-hand man, he knew how these street thugs operated. They were cowards by nature. They weren't going to risk a heavy police crackdown just to kick in a door. "Bring him to me as soon as possible," Su said, his voice dropping to a freezing chill. "Dead or alive, the person I work for is losing his patience." Even though I didn't know who was pulling Su's strings, the threat felt heavy. Xiao Si shivered on the other side of the phone, his voice shaking as he replied, "I understand, Butler Su. I'll get it done." The line went dead. Xiao Si let out a long breath, his back completely soaked with sweat. He knew the price of failure. The previous leader of the 4th squad of the Tiger mercenaries hadn't just lost his job for messing up. The big boss had killed him personally. If Xiao Si wasn't smart and obedient, a level 5 martial apprentice like him would never have kept his position. One wrong move, and he was a dead man. Suddenly, a younger thug named Xiao San burst into the room. Xiao Si frowned. He was trying to groom the kid, but the boy lacked composure. "Steady yourself, Xiao San," Xiao Si barked. "If the big boss saw you acting like this, you'd be catching a beating." I know, Xiao San panted, his eyes wide. "But Brother Si, the kid finally left his apartment. Our guys are tailing him right now." Xiao Si jumped up, his own composure vanishing instantly. "He's out? Where is he?" Xiao San rolled his eyes internally. "So much for being steady. He just left the city. He's headed for the wilderness. Heaven is on our side." Xiao Si grinned. He had been stressing over how to snatch me from my apartment, and now I was walking straight into a trap. It was like a gift from God. They quickly contacted the scout, who was following me. Xiao San grabbed the phone from the scout's hand as soon as they met up. "Where is he?" "He left the city half an hour ago," the scout muttered, looking down. "I'm only at the 3rd level of the martial apprentice realm. I didn't dare follow him into the wild. I lost him." Xiao Si wanted to explode, but he held it back. A 3rd-level kid following a 5th-level target into the monster-infested wilderness was a suicide mission anyway. He dismissed the scout and turned to Xiao San. "When the rest of the boys get here, we head out," Xiao Si said, his face hardening. "If we can't take him alive, we'll bring Butler Su his corpse." Xiao San stopped joking around. He saw the look in Xiao Si's eyes and realized how high the stakes were. He remembered the previous squad leader's execution. He didn't want to be next. Meanwhile, I was miles away, staring at the bodies of 11 wind wolves scattered around me. I felt a surge of pride. I had faced groups of beasts before, but this was different. When I fought those snakes and toads back at the slaughterhouse, they were already exhausted from fighting each other. These wolves were at full strength. They were fast, but they couldn't even touch me. I had cut them down like they were nothing. System notifications popped up in my vision. Asterisk experience plus 6,000. Experience plus 500. Asterisk. I noticed my northern brightness divine art was working faster now, pulling in the energy with incredible efficiency. The only downside was that I still had to physically touch the carcasses to absorb the points. Within minutes, the wolves were gone, leaving behind only 11 pelts. Don't get cocky, I muttered to myself, shaking off the pride. They were only level 1, 6th grade beasts. I'm a martial artist now. Beating them is just bullying the weak. I packed the pelts and kept moving. I knew I had undergone a qualitative change since breaking through. With all my martial skills at the perfection realm, losing to a pack of wolves would have made me a joke. Still, most new martial artists hated wind wolves. They were fast, they hunted in packs, and they were a nightmare to escape from. I had made it look easy. I trekked about 80 kilometers away from Honghai City. The monsters were getting stronger, mostly around the 8th grade of level 1, but nothing could stop me. Suddenly, a flash of crimson caught my eye near some tall weeds. I pushed the grass aside and gasped. Red leaf grass. There were several stalks of vibrant, blood-red plants growing in the shade. I remembered my herbology classes from sophomore year. This stuff was a primary ingredient for body-tempering pills. On the open market, a single stalk was worth 200,000 yuan. My old teacher used to joke that if we were brave enough to risk our lives outside the walls, we could strike it rich with just one find. Back then, the old Guo had dreamed of finding some to fund his training, but he was too terrified of the beasts to ever try. I smiled, feeling like I was fulfilling a ghost's dream. I reached out and touched the plants. Experience plus 10,000. 10,000 points from a plant. My heart nearly stopped. This was a gold mine. I really didn't expect it. A single, tiny plant gave me 10,000 experience points just from absorbing it. I remembered that a full packet of body tempering powder only provided 500 points. Damn profiteers, I muttered. A packet of that powder cost 30,000 yuan, while a stalk of red leaf grass went for 200,000. The price difference was about sixfold, but the actual medicinal potency was night and day. I didn't know the exact price of a finished body tempering pill, but I knew it had to be a fortune. I cursed the greedy merchants again in my head. What I didn't realize back then was that body tempering powder was actually made from the leftover dregs of the pill-making process, mixed with a few cheap fillers. If I had known that, I would have cursed the alchemists even harder. It even made me consider whether I should study alchemy myself once I got into a martial arts university. Experience plus 10,000. Experience plus 10,000. My luck was incredible. This spot hadn't been discovered by anyone else. In total, these red leaf grass stalks provided me with a staggering 110,000 experience points. It was basically free money. I didn't even think about harvesting them to sell. I was already carrying enough monster pelts, which were worth plenty of cash. Besides, I remembered from my studies that these herbs needed special containers to preserve their potency once picked. Without them, the medicinal value would just bleed away. Absorbing them directly into the system was much more efficient. I looked around. If red leaf grass grew here, maybe there were more nearby. Even if the chances were slim, it was worth keeping an eye out. One stalk was worth 10,000 points. That was a sweet deal. Xiao Wang, are you sure about this? A man asked. Brother Long, I'm positive, Xiao Wang replied respectfully. 2 months ago, my friends and I were clearing this area. The red leaf grass wasn't fully ripe yet, so we camouflaged the spot. Based on the timing, it should be ready now. Xiao Wang's voice was polite, but his heart was heavy. If his buddies, Adai and Scarface, hadn't mysteriously vanished, he never would have reported this find to his superior. Back then, the leaves hadn't turned fully crimson. Unripe grass was worth less than a third of the price of a mature stalk. They had hidden it, promising to come back together. Now, he couldn't reach any of them. He regretted not just picking it back then. If the grass is still there, Brother Long said, ignoring the fact that Xiao Wang had hidden the find for 2 months, I'll credit you with a win and promote you to squad leader. Thank you, Brother Long. Xiao Wang's bitterness vanished instantly. He started praying that no one had stumbled onto their secret. They hiked for about half an hour until Xiao Wang recognized the landmarks. Brother Long, it's right there by that tree. Brother Long grunted a steady reply, but his heart was racing. Red leaf grass wasn't common. If he could get enough to refine a few body-tempering pills, he wouldn't have to worry about resources for his current realm. Even raw, it could help him break through 2 minor stages. He had been stuck at the 5th level of the martial artist realm for far too long simply because he was too poor to buy supplies. As they got closer, Xiao Wang grew more anxious. His promotion depended on this. The next second, their hopes shattered. They pushed aside the weeds, but the ground was empty. There was nothing but common grass. Brother Long, it's gone. Someone took it, Xiao Wang said, his voice dropping. Brother Long didn't say a word. He knelt down, brushing the dirt with his fingers. If I had been there, I would have been shocked. He was touching the exact spot where I had just stood. He looked at the small, unsealed holes in the dirt. The soil is still damp. These were pulled about an hour ago. His eyes sharpened. He counted 11 small pits, all roughly the same size. That meant there had been at least 11 stalks. Brother Long felt a surge of adrenaline. Xiao Wang had said there were a few, but 11 was a massive haul. They were just here, Brother Long growled, his voice heavy with intent. Search the area. If we find them, we'll ask for the grass back. Xiao Wang perked up. His promotion was back on the table. I spent a while circling the area, but I didn't find any more red leaf grass. I figured I was being greedy. This wasn't exactly a deserted wasteland. If there were more, they would have been snatched up long ago. Thinking back to how well that patch was hidden under layers of weeds, I realized it must have been camouflaged by someone waiting for it to ripen. I decided to stop hunting for herbs and let things happen naturally. Suddenly, a noise caught my ear. What was that? I looked around, but the woods were empty. Not a single monster was in sight. I figured I was just overexcited and hearing things. Chirp, squeak, hiss. The sounds came again, longer and more distinct this time, though still distant. I knew I wasn't crazy. I whispered. It sounded like monsters fighting. Even though I couldn't see them yet, I started moving toward the noise. I still remembered the last time I stumbled upon a monster brawl. I had walked away with 500,000 experience points just by scavenging the leftovers. If there was a fight happening, there was a profit to be made. I followed the sounds, but the woods went silent again. I stopped and waited, holding my breath. A minute later, the intermittent cries started up again. I picked up the pace, moving quickly toward the source. As the sounds grew clearer, my expression shifted from excitement to confusion. This didn't sound like a chaotic brawl. If my ears weren't tricking me, there were only 3 creatures ahead, and the sounds they were making were strange. One of the voices sounded like a bird. Another was clearly a snake. The third one, though? I couldn't quite place it. It sounded a bit like a rat, but there was something heavier to it, something more dangerous. I was deep in the forest now. Massive trees towered over me, their branches knitting together to block out the sun. I didn't recognize the species, but that didn't matter. I had come this far. I wasn't turning back now. Besides, if things got hairy, I could just bolt. My basic movement technique was at the perfection level. Between my speed and the thick terrain, I was confident I could outrun even a level 3 monster. Big monsters hate dense forests. They can't move their massive bodies through the brush. I crept forward and spotted a creature perched on a high branch. Is that a gale sparrow? I wondered. I wasn't entirely sure. Back in high school, they mostly taught us about level 1 monsters. Level 2 stuff was in the textbooks, but the pictures were grainy and hard to compare to the real thing. I'd never seen a live gale sparrow before, but it fit the description. As for anything level 3, I couldn't imagine one showing up in a place like this. I moved a bit closer, and the view suddenly opened up. I was standing near a steep cliff, maybe 30 or 40 meters high. 3 monsters were positioned in a tense triangle, facing off in front of the rock wall. Now that I had a clear line of sight, I identified the other 2. One was bright green with a triangular head and 3 eerie eyes. Its arms were shaped like massive, jagged blades. That was a double-blade mantis, a notorious level 2 monster. The last one was unmistakable, a king cobra. Its hood was flared wide, showing off that iconic spectacle-shaped pattern on its back. Another level 2. The 3 of them were hissing and chirping at each other. I don't speak monster, but it wasn't hard to guess they were arguing over something. The fact that they were at a stalemate told me the gale sparrow was definitely level 2 as well. If it were level 3, The other two would have been bird food 10 minutes ago. Strange, I whispered to myself. These three are natural enemies. I stayed low, not daring to show my face. Even though there were only 3 of them, they were deadly. As I watched, I noticed something subtle. Their heads kept twitching toward the cliffside. It was a tiny movement, so small I almost missed it, but they were definitely keeping an eye on the rock wall. I scanned the cliff but saw nothing at first. Then, I shifted my position. Hidden behind a cluster of thick shrubs and blocked by 2 large trees was the entrance to a cave. There has to be something good in there, I thought. You don't get 3 level 2 monsters playing a game of Mexican standoff over an empty hole. Just as I was weighing my options, the tension snapped. Negotiation time was over. My heart started thumping against my ribs. The king cobra lost its patience first. It lunged forward, snapping its jaws open. 2 streams of jet black venom shot out like bullets, one aimed at the mantis and the other at the sparrow. The gale sparrow didn't even break a sweat. It just flapped its wings and took to the sky. The mantis was just as casual, stepping an inch to the right, so the venom hissed harmlessly past. One of those venom streaks flew right toward me, slamming into a tree about 10 meters away. I watched in horror as the bark began to sizzle and pop. Within seconds, the black sludge ate a hole straight through the trunk. The hole kept growing, wider and wider, until it was the size of a basketball. My skin crawled. If that hit me, I'd be lucky to survive with my skin intact. I had a sinking feeling they already knew I was there. I was right. To monsters like these, I was just a tiny, weak bug watching from the sidelines. I wasn't worth their time, at least not yet. The gale sparrow retaliated from the air. It spread its wings wide, then snapped them shut with a sharp whoosh. 2 visible blades of wind sliced through the air, screaming toward its opponents. Holy crap, I muttered. Is that really just level 2? I knew snakes could spit venom, but wind blades? That was some high-level stuff. What I didn't know was that gale sparrows unlock this wind blade ability the moment they hit level 2. The king cobra didn't bother dodging. It just let its tough scales take the hit. But the double-blade mantis? That thing was a badass. It didn't move an inch until the wind blade was right in its face. Then, with a flash of green, it swung its right arm. Clang, the wind blade was sliced clean in half, dissipating into the trees on either side. I was actually impressed. That was the coolest thing I'd seen since I got to this world. The mantis didn't waste the opening. It blurred into motion, its speed explosive as it charged the cobra. It couldn't reach the bird in the trees, so the snake was the next best target. It leaped into the air, bringing both massive blades down in a crushing overhead strike. The king cobra's tail lashed out, and the real fight began. The king cobra tried to slap the mantis away with its massive tail, but it underestimated its opponent. In midair, the double-blade mantis twisted its body with impossible agility, shifting its strike toward the snake's tail. The collision was violent. Both beasts were sent flying backward from the force of the impact. Through the thick leaves, I saw them lock eyes. Their pupils narrowed into slits. I could feel the raw killing intent radiating from them. The cobra moved first. Its tail lashed out again in a blinding blur, sweeping toward the mantis. The mantis crossed its blades in a defensive X shape, absorbing the blow, but the force pushed it back 4 heavy steps. As soon as it found its footing, it lunged forward. It slammed its blades down, pinning the tail to the ground. 2 deep, bloody gashes appeared on the snake's flesh. The king cobra hissed in pain and yanked its tail back, scales scraping against the dirt. The gale sparrow saw its chance. It wasn't about to let a golden opportunity like this pass. It dived from its branch like a streak of gray lightning, talons extended, aiming straight for the cobra's head. But the mantis wasn't interested in sharing. Just as the bird was about to make contact, the mantis leaped. Its green body blurred as it intercepted the sparrow, its blades catching the bird's wing. Feathers exploded into the air. The sparrow screeched in fury as it tumbled to the ground, its wing badly mangled. It knew it was at a disadvantage on the forest floor. It tried to beat its wings, desperate to regain the safety of the sky. The king cobra wasn't going to let it go that easily. Seeing the bird was grounded, the snake launched itself like a spring. It caught the sparrow mid-air, coiling its thick, muscular body around the bird in a suffocating grip. The sparrow fought back like a demon. It pecked frantically at the snake's body, its sharp beak tearing through scales. Blood sprayed everywhere. I watched as scales popped off the snake's skin, leaving gaping red holes. The cobra didn't let go. It squeezed harder. Asterisk crack. Crack. Asterisk. Even from my hiding spot, I heard the sound of the sparrow's bones snapping. After a few final, pathetic chirps, the bird went limp. It was over. The mantis watched the whole thing, its wariness growing. It knew the snake was dangerous when it started coiling. The moment the sparrow breathed its last, the mantis struck. The cobra was ready. It had been watching the mantis the entire time, expecting a backstab. It dropped the dead bird and whipped its tail around, forcing the mantis back. Then, the snake did something insane. It let out a deafening hiss and lunged forward with its jaws wide open. It didn't try to bite. It tried to swallow the mantis whole. It wanted to trap the insect in its mouth and let the venom do the work. The mantis fought for its life inside those jaws. It used its left blade to prop the mouth open, preventing the snake from snapping its head off. With its right blade, it slashed wildly at the soft tissue of the snake's throat. They stayed locked like that for a long time. Eventually, the mantis ran out of strength. Its arms began to tremble. As it collapsed, it made one final, desperate move. It jammed both of its blades upward, straight into the roof of the snake's mouth. The cobra felt the resistance vanish and let out a triumphant hiss. It bit down with everything it had, crushing the mantis. But its victory lasted only a second. Suddenly, the snake began to writhe in agony. It rolled across the forest floor, thrashing its tail and trying to spit the mantis out. No matter how hard it shook, the dead insect stayed lodged in its throat. The mantis had gotten the last laugh. One of its blades had pierced through the roof of the mouth and driven straight into the cobra's brain. The snake's movements grew sluggish. Its tail gave one last, weak twitch, and then it fell still. I sat there in the silence, my heart hammering against my ribs. 3 level 2 monsters. All dead. And I was the only one left standing.